portion of the sponsorship earnings will be donated to the Olson Family Foundation. A link will be left in the description box down below if you feel inclined to donate as well. Chad Olson was born September 28, 1970, in Alton, Illinois. He had a larger-than-life personality and was able to make friends at the drop of a hat. He was incredibly outgoing and adventurous, making friends everywhere he went. Friends and family often joked that he had friends in the most unlikely of places, by the sheer fact that he seemed to talk to everyone. As a child, he loved monster trucks, trampolines, and playing baseball with his friends and family. He had no filter and would often approach strangers, telling them random facts about his own personal interests, regardless of if they wanted to talk or not. His interests only expanded as time went on, with him taking up numerous other hobbies. As a teenager, he played guitar, rode horses, camped regularly, and would often ride dirt bikes whenever he could. There was always something more for him to do, something else that he needed to learn. And in November of 1990, Chad decided that his boundless energy was best suited for a career in the U.S. Navy. He attended basic training in Great Lakes, Illinois, and aviation school in Meridian, Mississippi. After training, Chad became a part of the Top Hatters Squadron, the oldest active squadron in the U.S. Navy. Just like before, he had made friends every step of the way, quickly rising ranks and spending 6 months on the aircraft carrier, the USS Johnson F. Kennedy, CV-67. Where he traveled throughout the Mediterranean Sea region. He traveled throughout the world multiple times, but after serving 2 tours, he ended his naval career in 1998 at 28 years old. Shortly thereafter, he met Nicole Gaspard while working at Citibank, and the two quickly fell in love. From the moment they met, Nicole would state that she knew that Chad was going to be the man she was going to marry, as they both seemed to fit into each other's lives. After 4 years, the two were married, and 5 years later, they would have their daughter, Alexis Olson. And only 22 months later, Chad's life would be taken in one of the most senseless crimes we've ever covered. Welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we are going to be covering the case of Curtis Reeves. This is a case I followed closely at the time it occurred, and I would dare to say it has one of the most polarizing endings to it, with some people going so far as to state that the justice system failed, and other people claiming that there was no crime to begin with. I expect to find both statements in the comments down below, hopefully written respectfully. As I always strive to do, today I will present the facts of the case as they are, go over interrogation and trial footage, and allow you to come to your own conclusion. Due to the polarizing responses to this case, I will also leave the sources used in the creation of the video in the description box down below. That way you can research the case for yourself and circumvent any potential bias in my reporting. It's imperative that you research these topics yourself if you have any interest in them. That way you can be discerning of the media you consume. Regardless of where your opinion falls, I want to urge you to consider donating to the Olson Family Foundation, which helps families that have children who have been directly or indirectly impacted by gun violence. They're able to supply counseling, medical attention, and college tuition, which is an unseen consequence of these cases. I'll be leaving a link in the description box down below if you feel compelled to donate. This topic, like the overwhelming majority of my videos, was requested by multiple subscribers. If there's a topic you would like to see covered, feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments down below, or email me at dreading.official@gmail.com. I'm constantly working on new scripts based on your suggestions, and I have a long list of cases that I plan on covering in depth. Before we begin, a word from our sponsor. Like Chad Olson, Curtis Reeves was a U.S. Navy veteran, but unlike Chad, Curtis had fallen in love with working in high stakes as well as dangerous environments. He finished second out of 20 when he trained at the sniper school, and often boasted that fact whenever he could. To all of his friends, he was known as the gun guy, always quick to the draw like the cowboys of yesteryear, which Curtis felt very proud of. After serving in the Navy and working on submarines for 2 years, Curtis was honorably discharged and quickly began to work with law enforcement. In 1966, he joined the Tampa Police Department. He was one of the department's first hostage negotiators and was incredibly skilled in de-escalation tactics, the most common of which is the behavioral change stairway model. This model includes 5 basic steps, often done through the course of hours and sometimes days. These steps are active listening, empathy, rapport, influence, and behavioral change. Most hostage situations are an expression of negative emotion that has been built up over time. This person feels wronged, misunderstood, and suppressed in some way, so they are acting out in order to gain control or to feel important. And Curtis's entire job was to make that person feel seen, understood, and to decide to face the consequences of their actions. And it was a job he was considered great at. In times of high stress and tension, Curtis would be able to talk a person down off of a ledge and get them to understand what they were doing wasn't right and settle whatever conflict that was occurring. In 1977, Curtis's work was evaluated by the Tampa Police Department, and the evaluator stated that he had a forceful personality and that it had proven to be an asset in his work. However, colleagues seemed to feel otherwise, as multiple other police officers claimed that they didn't enjoy working alongside Reeves. They considered him to be negative, self-serving, and arrogant, always willing to take credit for work he hadn't done, and not taking the job as seriously as he should have. These complaints would be brushed aside in 1982, when a supervisor wrote another evaluation, saying those complaints held no water. Curtis was eventually promoted to a captain position, but those who worked alongside him stated that he was frustrated. He wanted to be in control and didn't like answering to anyone. He would do things his own way, and would often lash out when he was told to do things by the book because he believed he knew better. In 1993, almost 30 years on the force, Curtis retired and began to work as head of security of Busch Gardens. The job offered him free time and was supposed to be less stressful than working as a hostage negotiator for the police. But Curtis took the job just as seriously. Curtis was hired as head of security, meaning that he was the top brass at the theme park and couldn't be told what to do, which posed a problem for those who worked under him. According to Christine and Dave Cook, who worked with Reeves at the theme park, he was a condescending control freak who would often demand things be run according to his specifications. He would tell the park's conservationists how to talk to the children that they taught daily, and he would act as if he was the smartest person in the room. Despite working in a field where he was taught how to de-escalate conflict, Curtis seemed to bring it into his professional life regularly, which is why he eventually retired to live out his later years with his wife, Vivian. Now that he had retired, Vivian and Curtis would often spend their days together, going on small dates and enjoying each other's company. But on one of these dates, the unthinkable would happen. Both Chad Olson and Curtis Reeves decided that on January 13th, 2014, they were going to take their wives to see the movie Lone Survivor, starring Mark Wahlberg. Both men had read the nonfiction book that the movie was based on, and as veterans, they thought the movie would be interesting to watch. Chad and Nicole had been wanting to go on a date for a while. Having a 22-month-old baby at home meant that they had spent less time together in the run-up to their date, and they were excited to spend their day together. Both men took their wives to the Cobb Theater near Tampa, Florida, and bought tickets to the matinee, and it was there that Reeves would end up taking Olson's life. The following is the sequence of events as presented by the prosecution's opening statements.
The jury, what you're going to learn during the course of this trial is that back on January 13th of 2014, Chad and Nicole Olson decided to spend the day together. It was a Monday. They had not been spending that much time together based on their work schedules. So they decided on that day that they were going to put Lexi in daycare and go out for breakfast, possibly shopping, maybe over to Wiregrass. And eventually, at some point on January 13th, they decided to go to the Cobb Grove Theater. They were going to see the movie Lone Survivor. So what you're going to learn is that they go to the theater. When they get there, they purchase their tickets. They then go inside to the concession stand and they buy some snacks. After that, they decide to go into the theater. Now, this theater is theater number 10. And what you're going to learn is that theater number 10 is a Cinebistro. It's a general theater and a Cinebistro. And you may know what a Cinebistro is, but basically it's an area of the theater where you can order food kind of like in a restaurant setting. You don't have to go to the concession stand. And this particular part of theater number 10 is separated from the general theater by a wall. In fact, there's a separate entrance. Now, what you're going to learn is that when Chad and Nicole Olson decided to go into theater number 10, they were looking for some seats that were towards the back of the theater. That's where they like to sit. So they chose the row that was the second to back last row. And they went over towards the middle. Nicole Olson sat down, and on her right was Chad Olson. Now, at this point in time, there wasn't that many people in the theater. People were still coming in. They had their snacks. They were talking. And at some point in time, one of them, doesn't matter who, one of them wanted some more snacks of some type of candy. Chad Olson gets up, leaves the theater, goes back to the concession area, and of course more and more people are coming into theater number 10 to see the movie. When Chad Olson comes back, he sits down. Again, he's still on Nicole Olson's right. And at some point in time during this, the defendant and his wife, whose name is Vivian Reeves, comes into the theater. Now, when they come into the theater, they decide to sit in the very back row. Now, there's a wall behind them, because behind that wall is where the Cinebistro area is. They go to the very back row, walk all the way across to the middle, and they sit down. Picture this. So, in the very back row, you're going to have the defendant. He's sitting in the middle. Directly in front of him is Nicole Olson. To Nicole Olson's right is going to be Chad Olson. Behind Chad Olson is the defendant's wife, Vivian Reeves. Now, you are going to learn that there is a video. And by video, I mean just that. There is a video and not an audio. The video comes from the Cinebistro area. There are two cameras inside of theater number 10 on opposite sides of the theater. Now, they were designed, as I mentioned, to capture the Cinebistro area, but they did capture some of the general part of the theater and did capture this shooting. Did capture people coming in the theater, did capture people leaving the theater, the defendant leaning in and talking to Chad Olson, things of that nature. The video did capture that. Again, there's no audio. The audio is going to come from witnesses. Now, what happens? The previews start. People are seated inside the theater. Again, you have the defendant in the very back row in the middle. In front of him is Nicole Olson. Over to her right is Chad Olson. Behind Chad Olson is Vivian Reeves. The previews start, and there is a message that you should turn your cell phones off, basically. Now, here's what you're going to learn. Chad Olson had his cell phone on. Now, by on, this is what I mean. Chad Olson, the evidence will show you, he's not talking on his phone. He's not conducting a business transaction. He's not talking to a friend, a family member, not having a loud conversation. By on, literally the phone is on. That's it. The evidence will show you that there was a white light coming from the phone. That's how the phone was on. You're going to learn that almost immediately, or very close after the time of that message, please be responsible, turn your cell phone off, whatever the message is. Very close in time to that, without really waiting, the defendant over here leans in to Chad Olson and Nicole Olson. Because the evidence will show you the cell phone had a light on it. Now, what you're going to learn is that this defendant leans all the way in, and it's going to sound silly when I say this, to Chad Olson's personal space. And you're going to see this on video because it's captured. Not only is a witness going to talk to you about it, but it was captured on video. The defendant leans all the way in from his seat and basically gets back to the left ear of Chad Olson. So the defendant's head is basically in their space. You're going to learn from a witness that the defendant's tone was kind of demanding. Turn your cell phone off. Now, at that point, the evidence will show you they're kind of taken aback by this. Now, Chad Olson did not turn his phone off. Now, here's what you're going to learn what was going on that phone. He was looking at Facebook. Social media. There was a website that he was looking at through Facebook. And they had been looking at it. The evidence will show you, of course, that's no reason to shoot another man. But here's what you're going to learn. That the defendant leans all the way forward, tells Chad Olson to turn his phone off. Chad Olson doesn't turn his phone off right away. Now, in a perfect world, should Chad Olson have turned his phone off? Yes, but the evidence will show you that you can't kill someone for that. Now, the evidence will also show you this, that the defendant waited a little bit, asked him again to turn his phone off, then got up to leave the theater. The defendant gets up, and as he goes out the aisle, he's mumbling to himself. Now, you're going to hear from a witness who's going to tell you that, based on her life experiences, he appeared to be agitated and angry. The evidence is going to show you that he was. He was annoyed that Chad Olson still had that phone light on. And he walks out, he's mumbling to himself. Now, as he's walking out fine. There's a video that you're going to see that shows him getting up and walking out of the theater. People watch him leave the theater. Remember, he's in the back row. Goes all the way down the steps. There might be 13 rows. You're going to see pictures. You can count for yourself. Walks all the way down the ramp, all the way to the manager's desk. He's there for about 3 minutes, walks back into the theater, all the way up the ramp, around the corner, all the way back up to the back row, all the way across again into the middle. Now, what happens? When he walks back into the theater, after speaking to the manager, coming back across the row. Now, it doesn't matter exactly when this happens. It's either as the defendant comes back into the theater, as he's sitting back down, or even some seconds after he's fully seated in his seat. Doesn't matter. But the defendant in this taped statement indicates that he reinitiates contact with Chad Olson. Now, what's the evidence going to show you in this case? Chad Olson was talking to someone earlier, and it was the person in the row in front. At no time will the evidence show you that Chad Olson is volunteering to talk to the defendant. The defendant's always the one initiating the conversation. And as the defendant comes back, based on his own statement, he indicates that he reinitiates contact with Chad Olson and tells him this. And here's something that's important you're going to learn during the trial. Chad Olson did, in fact, turn off his cell phone. The phone was off when the defendant came back into the theater. The evidence will show you that the defendant could have just sat back down in his seat and everyone could have watched the movie and everything would have been fine. The phone was off, no problems. The evidence will show you that after there's a conversation, Chad Olson is in his seat. Now, what the defendant states to Chad Olson is, "I see you put your phone away. I told the manager for no reason." Now, I submit the evidence will show you that there was no reason for that. Regardless, the statement was made. Based on the defendant's own statement, Chad Olson turns around in his seat. Now, when you listen to the defendant's taped statement, pay very close attention to the words he chooses to use and the order in which he uses these words. The defendant states Chad Olson turns around in his seat, and now Chad Olson says some words to him. Now, in a perfect world, should that have happened? No. The evidence will show you you can't shoot someone for that. Chad Olson does turn around and starts to have some words with the defendant. "Mind your own business, leave me alone." There might be an F-bomb in there. And at some point, very close in time, because this is all happening fairly quickly, it's fluid, Chad Olson stands up and continues, and he looks at the defendant. Chad Olson's in his row. Remember, he's an entire seat in front of the defendant. An entire row in front of the defendant, and an entire seat over. And during this conversation, while he's standing up, he says, "If it's any of your business," and there may be an F-bomb in there, "I was texting my daughter." Now, the evidence will show you that he was on Facebook. The evidence will show you that under the law, whether he was on Zillow, buying a car, buying a house, checking the stock market, Facebook, texting, you can't shoot and kill somebody. So the evidence will show you this. Chad Olson is standing up. And as he's standing up facing the defendant, and you will see this on video, Chad Olson reaches over with his right hand. And he reaches over into the defendant's lap and he grabs something. Now, this might sound silly. What does he grab? Does he grab a deadly weapon out of the defendant's lap? The evidence will show you absolutely not. Does he even grab a big tub of heavy popcorn? No. Here's what you're going to learn during this trial. Chad Olson reached over with his right hand into the lap area of the defendant and grabbed a bag of popcorn. And he grabbed that bag of popcorn and he brought it back and he flicked it at the defendant. Chad Olson stands up. He's facing the defendant. Says something about texting his daughter. He reaches over, grabs the bag of popcorn, and flicks it. Doesn't pull it back, isn't using it like a bat, just flicks the popcorn on him. His hand is now coming back. At about that very same time, Nicole Olson, remember, she's sitting in front of the defendant. She's starting to reach over with her left hand while this is happening. And in the process of getting up to say, "Honey, it's just sit down." So her hand's up. When her hand is up, and while Chad Olson's hand's coming back from that popcorn toss, this defendant shoots to kind of go over what happened. The evidence will show you Chad Olson is sitting in his seat, turns around, says a few words to the defendant. Stands up, says a few words to the defendant, reaches in, grabs the popcorn, flicks it. Now, this is important to watch on the video because it goes back to arthritis, my back, my knees. What you're going to see on the video is the defendant, in an incredibly quick and swift maneuver, reaches his right leg out as he's leaning back, goes into his pocket to get his firearm that he's brought into the theater, pulls it out, and lunges forward to shoot Chad Olson.
Chad and Nicole had sat down in the second to last row of the theater. Curtis and Vivian had sat directly behind them. The theater lights had not yet dimmed, and the previews had just begun to show when Olson took out his phone. Curtis was annoyed, self-admittedly. He believed the younger man in front of him was going to ruin his movie-going experience by being on his phone during the duration, and so he leaned forward, tapped Olson on the shoulder, and asked him to turn off his phone. Nicole would describe Reeves' tone as being demanding, as if he was ordering instead of asking. His whole demeanor, whole presence, the whole tone, everything about it, did not sound friendly, she stated. According to those present, Chad told the older man that the movie hadn't started yet, and went back to responding to the text. This response only served to annoy Curtis. The 71-year-old man then got out of his chair and left the theater, looking to report Chad to the manager and get him removed from the theater. A few moments later, he returned to his seat. By this time, Chad had already put his phone away. Curtis leaned forward and loudly remarked on the fact that he had talked to the theater's management about the issue, and that he was glad to see Chad had put his phone away. At this, Chad turned around, pissed, and asked the older man what the fuck his problem was, and in a childish move, grabbed popcorn and threw it at him. Reeves then drew his .380 handgun and fired, shooting Nicole in the finger and Chad in the chest. Chad would succumb to his wounds that same day. The following is the series of events as stated in trial by multiple witnesses.
Mr. Cummings, can you state your full legal name and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Charles J. Cummings, Jr., Cummings.
Mr. Cummings, directing your attention to January 13th of 2014, do you recall that day?
Yes, I do.
Is that day special to you?
Yes,
Can you tell the members of this jury why?
because it's my birthday.
Okay. On January 13th, 2014, was that a Monday?
Yes,
Did you take off from work?
yes, I did.
Did you plan on going to the movies with your son, Alex?
Yes, sir.
Now, we talked about Alex briefly. Is Alex disabled?
Yes, he's fully disabled.
Okay. Directing your attention to that date, did you go to the Cobb Theater?
Yes, we did.
What movie were you wanting to see?
We wanted to see Lone Survivor.
When you went into the movie theater and where you normally sit, was there a couple already sitting there?
Yes, there were people already sitting in those seats.
All right. Would that couple later became known to you as the Olsons?
Yes,
So tell us, you look up and lo and behold, somebody's already sitting in where you would have sat.
correct.
Where did you and your son decide to sit?
We decided to sit at the end seats,
Okay.
same aisle.
All right. What aisle was it?
I think it was the second aisle back from the bistro,
Okay.
from the top.
And when you looked in that direction, could you tell if anybody was sitting behind the Olsons?
Yes, there were people sitting there.
Okay. Was there an older couple sitting there?
There was a couple sitting there and maybe some other people.
Okay. So you take your seats.
Yes,
Are the previews playing?
yes,
Are they loud?
no,
Okay. You're watching the previews. Did you have a conversation with your son, Alex?
we would say we wanted to see this picture or we're not going to see this picture,
Okay.
things like that.
Did you have any difficulties hearing Alex?
No,
Could you hear conversations, say, 5 rows down?
not, I could hear people talking, but I didn't know what they were saying.
Okay. Now let me ask you, you don't have any hearing disabilities or impairments, right?
No,
All right. So the previews are going, and during the previews, does anything draw your attention to your left?
yes, it does.
Okay, what is the first thing that you saw or heard?
First thing I saw was a light from a cell phone.
Okay. And would that have been Mr. Olson's cell phone?
It was Mr. Olson's cell phone.
Where was it?
I believe it was on his lap.
Okay. Let me ask, did you pay much attention to it?
No,
What did you, all right, so you noticed it, and then what'd you do?
back to watching the previews.
Okay. What's the next thing that happens?
The next thing that happened is someone is talking to Mr. Olson about the cell phone.
Okay. Did Mr. Olson respond to this gentleman?
Yes, he said something along the lines of, I'm texting my babysitter or I'm texting my daughter's babysitter.
Okay.
Texting.
Texting. This person who you said you later became known to as Mr. Olson,
Yes.
right? Was he screaming?
No.
Was he angry?
No.
Was he agitated at that time?
No. Informative.
Okay. So you hear these conversations, you go back to watching the previews, right?
Previous. Yes.
As you're watching the previews, what's the next thing that happens?
The next thing that happened is there was some type of interchange between Olson and the gentleman sitting behind him. And the gentleman sitting behind him stood up and left the theater.
Okay. Did you hear that conversation, or you couldn't?
No, no, I could not hear their conversation.
Okay. So at that point, Mr. Reeves leaves.
There's the person behind him who was in a, yes, he left the theater.
All right. What was his demeanor as he left the theater?
He seemed to be shuffling his feet fairly quickly. As he passed my seat, he was mumbling to himself, and it sounded very agitated in that mumbling. And he also hit my seat and the back of my head as he was passing.
All right, let me ask you, so he hits the back of your seat. Did he say, "Oh, I'm sorry, sir"?
No, he did not.
Did he say, "Excuse me"?
No, he did not.
He didn't say anything to you.
No, he did not.
Did you see him walk out of the theater?
Yes, I did.
Did he have any difficulties walking?
He walked normal as far as I could see.
Okay. How long is he gone?
He's gone about 3 or 4 minutes.
Okay. While he's gone, is there anything else going on in the theater?
Not that I knew of, just watching the previews again.
All right. Did you see him coming back up?
Yes, I saw him coming back up.
Can you tell the members of this jury his gait? Was he walking rapidly, quick, slow?
He was walking a little bit faster than normal. The reason I watched him because I wanted to make sure he didn't hit my seat again.
Okay. Did he get to his row?
Yes, he did.
Did he have any difficulties? Did he hit the back of your seat or anything then?
No, he didn't.
Okay. Did you see him sit down?
I saw him go to where he was. I don't believe if he sat down or I saw him get as far as he got to his seat. I don't know if I noticed that he sat down.
You're sitting there, Mr. Reeves is back. What is the next thing that draws your attention to that area?
There seems to be a heated conversation
Okay, between Mr. Olson and Mr. Reeves.
between Mr. Olson and Mr. Reeves.
Okay. Could you hear what Mr. Reeves said?
No, I could not hear what he said exactly, no.
All right, but you could hear him speaking. You
I
just-
knew that they were conversing.
All right.
Yeah.
Could you hear what Mr. Olson said?
At one point, I heard what he said when he stood up.
Okay. And when he stood up, what did you hear him say?
Are you trying to get me thrown out of the theater or something like that?
All right. Now, prior to the shot, did you ever see Mr. Olson climbing over his chair?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see him throw a punch?
No, I did not.
Did you ever see him throw an object?
No, I did not.
Prior to the shot, did you ever hear Mr. Reeves say anything or react as if he had been hit either by a punch or an object?
No,
Did you ever see him react, such as, "Oh," and grab his face
no, I did not.
prior to seeing the flash and hearing the gunshot? Did you ever see Mr. Olson all the way back, Mr. Reeves all the way back in his chair saying either "whoa, whoa, whoa" or "no, no, no"?
I did not hear that, no.
Did you see it?
I did not hear it nor see it.
All right. So, getting back to the events. Mr. Olson standing up, right?
Yes,
You indicated he said, "What, are you trying to get me thrown out of the theater?"
yes.
What is the next thing that you observe?
The next thing I observe is popcorn in the air.
All right.
Oh.
Do you know how it got in the air?
I do not know how it got in the air, but when it was in the air, that's what caught my attention again.
All right. So popcorn's in the air.
Popcorn's in the air,
What's the next thing that happens?
flash, shot.
Flash and a bang.
Yes,
All right. Immediately or soon thereafter, did you hear Mr. Reeves make a statement?
yes, I did.
Okay. What did you hear him say?
Something along the lines of throw popcorn in my face or throw popcorn at me.
Go ahead, Mr. Rosenwasser.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Can you please state your name and spell your first and last name for the court reporter?
Jane Roy, Janeroy.
January 13th of 2014, did you decide to go to the movies?
Yes, we did.
And who were you going to go to the movies with?
My husband.
Now, looking at you, and I don't think members of the jury can see that side of your face, but let's talk about, for lack of a better word, a disability. Do you have any disabilities with respect to hearing in your left ear?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and what is that?
I had a brain tumor. It was called an acoustic neuroma, and it left me paralyzed on the left side of my face. I couldn't close my eye, and I was deaf in my left ear.
All right, so let's talk about January 13th of 2014. You and your husband decided to go to a movie?
Yes.
And what movie theater was that?
Theater 10, I believe it was at the Groves in
Okay.
Wesley Chapel.
Okay, the Grove Theater in Wesley Chapel. You think it
Yes.
was in theater number 10?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, do you know what movie it was?
Yes, The Lone Survivor.
Okay. With respect to the volume, when you sat down in your seats, okay? Well, let's talk about where you sat. You said you like to sit in the back row, and then where?
In the center.
All right, were you able to sit in the center on this particular day?
No, there was already a couple sitting there.
All right, so let's just fast forward for a second. This couple that you're talking about, was that individual involved in the shooting that we're going to be discussing?
Yes.
All right. Did you later learn the name of that person or that couple?
Yes, I found out that their name, it was Curtis Reeves. I don't know his wife's name.
Okay, but you didn't know them at the time of the shooting?
I knew nobody in the theater.
Okay, and eventually we're going to talk about someone that was shot. Did you come to learn that person's name later on?
Yes, that
Okay.
was Chad Olson.
Okay, all right, but again, you didn't know him either.
I knew nobody.
All right, so when we're talking about the names, it's just because after the shooting you learned the names of those individuals?
Yes,
All right, so you indicated that the Reeves were sitting in the seats that you wanted to sit in, was that correct?
yes.
All right, so where in relation to the Reeveses did you end up sitting?
Well, it was Mr. Reeves, his wife, an empty seat. Then it was myself and then my husband.
Okay. And the left side was then facing the Reeveses, is that correct?
Yes,
All right, and that, we already talked about, that was the side that you have a little bit of difficulty.
yes.
All right. Did there come a point in time when your attention was focused to your left?
Yes.
Okay, what was one of the first things that happened that caused you to start looking to your left?
Well, they started talking about the turning the cell phone off.
Okay, that's like during the previews?
Yes. And I noticed some commotion to my left, so I turned to directly look at them, and Mr. Reeves was leaned over speaking to Chad Olson, and I could see a light, so I figured that he had a phone and he was on his phone.
Okay, when you say he was on his phone, who are you referring to?
Chad Olson,
Okay,
sorry.
Could you see from where you were on which side of Chad Olson's body that light was from? Do you know if he was holding it in his right hand or left hand at the time, or you just saw a light?
I saw a light.
Okay. And how much time do you think had passed between the time that the message went on in the preview about the cell phones and you saw the defendant reach or lean over to talk to Chad Olson?
Almost as soon as they started talking, I saw Mr. Reeves lean over to talk to Mr. Olson.
Okay.
It was almost immediate.
Almost immediately after the message was played
It
about
was
the
on
cell
the
phone.
screen,
Okay,
yes.
so it's not like 3 or 4 minutes went by, it was
Oh,
immediate.
no, no.
After you saw the defendant lean over to Mr. Olson and have that conversation, What's the next thing that you saw?
Mr. Reeves stood up, and he turned to his, it would have been his left, and he started walking through the aisle of the theater to go down.
Okay. Were you on the right of Mr. Reeves?
I was on the right of Mr. Reeves, yes.
Okay, because I might have to orientate you a little bit. Did Mr. Reeves walk by you to get out of the row?
Yes, he did. He turned to go out the row. He was walking quickly. He was mumbling. He seemed to be upset or irate about something, and he went down the row and down the stairs.
Okay, so when you said that he went to his left, did you mean that he went to his right to pass by you?
Oh, yes, that's right, too. It would have been his right, yes, yes,
Okay, so you indicated that as he's passing by you, you're watching him.
yes.
All right, and you also hear him?
Well, I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he was mumbling.
Okay. Did it appear to you that he was having a conversation with his wife?
Oh, absolutely not.
All right, and why are you saying that?
Well, he had been past her. I mean, there was an empty seat and her on my left, and by that time he was in front of me. He wasn't turned back towards his wife like he would have been talking to her, and he was mumbling in front of me, and he was mumbling as he went by, so
Okay.
wouldn't have made sense.
And did you watch him as he exited out your row?
Well, I saw him walk by and get into the stairway.
Okay. And did you watch him go out, or you just
I
started
saw
paying
him go
attention?
down the stairs.
Okay. Did you see him having any difficulty when he was leaving the aisle or going down the rows, anything like that?
Not at all.
All right. Did he have a cane or anything that was helping him walk?
No.
Did you notice when he came back into the theater?
Yes.
Okay. And where, just approximately, was it that you first saw him coming back into the theater?
I guess when he was probably halfway up the stairway, I would see his head, and then I noticed that he was coming back up.
Okay. Did he have to walk by you again, obviously?
Yes.
All right. Did he have any difficulty walking up the stairs, walking through the row to get to the middle?
No, at that point I had pulled my legs up because I was afraid that he was going to bump me again, but no, he just walked right by and he sat down.
Okay. And by bumping you, you don't mean he intentionally bumped you?
Oh, no, no.
Just when someone exits a row, that's just what happens in a movie
Yes.
theater. Okay. Do you see Mr. Reeves sit down, or do you just see him go back to the area that he was sitting?
As far as I remember, he came into the row and he sat down. He went next to his wife and he sat down.
Okay, so let's talk about what happens a few moments after that. Do you then get your attention directed to the left again at some point?
Yes, I could see that there was something going on, so I turned to look, and Mr. Olson had stood up, and he looked at Mr. Reeves and he said, "You went and reported me."
Okay. Now, when you say that Mr. Olson had stood up, is he in his row?
Yes. No, he never left his row. He just stood in front of his seat, and he looked at Mr. Reeves and he said, "You went and reported me," or something to that effect.
Okay, and then what happened next?
Well, the first thing I knew, popcorn went flying, and almost immediately I saw Mr. Reeves' hand come up, and I saw a flash of red, and I thought, what the heck? There was a loud noise, it smelled, and then I thought, oh my God, he shot him. And then I saw Chad Olson turn around. He was facing Mr. Reeves, so he would have turned to his left to go out the row, like he was going to exit the row, but then he fell right in front of me.
Okay. When you heard that noise, was it a loud noise?
Yes.
Okay. Were you shocked?
Yes.
All right, so let's talk about this just a little bit more. When Mr. Olson stood up, did you see him attempt to climb over into what would basically be your row?
Never.
Okay. Did he start threatening to beat up or kill or anything like that?
No.
Did you ever see him throw an object? And by him, I mean, did you see Chad Olson throw any objects at the defendant?
Absolutely not.
Did you hear the defendant say anything, and it's going to sound kind of silly, but exclaim like, "Oh my God," or "I'm hit," or "I'm hurt," anything like that?
Never.
Did you ever hear the defendant yelling at all?
No.
Did you ever see the defendant putting his arm out and yelling, "No, no, no," or "Whoa, whoa, whoa," as if someone was attacking him?
Never, never.
Did you ever see a female with Chad Olson?
No, I was so concerned that Mr. Olson and Mr. Reeves were going to have a physical altercation. And I thought that Mr. Reeves was going to stand up as quickly as he did when he left to go out of the theater, and he was going to punch Mr. Olson in the nose or something like that. I never expected a shot. I thought it was going to be a physical thing.
Okay, so you thought the defendant was going to attack Chad Olson physically?
Yes, yeah, he was the one that appeared to me to be mad.
Okay, not Mr. Olson.
No,
According to an off-duty police officer who was in the theater at the time of the shooting, Vivian Reeves told her husband, quote, that was no cause to shoot anyone, unquote, at which point Curtis turned to his wife and told her, quote, shut your fucking mouth and don't say another word. Many have gone to claim that Curtis was already trying to formulate his legal defense, and knew that if his wife had been heard saying he was in the wrong, it could be used against him. The couple has gone on to claim that this statement never occurred, and that Alan Hamilton, the man who made it, is a liar. The theater had descended into chaos, as Chad was dying on the floor and Nicole had lost her finger, and nearly everyone present felt their lives were at risk, as those who witnessed the shooting felt as if Curtis had been the aggressor. He had confronted Chad multiple times, loudly instigating an argument with him, and despite his previous career and knowledge of de-escalation, he had escalated the argument at multiple levels. He seemed angry, not afraid of Chad, and that anger led many people to believe that their own lives were at risk. The police were quickly called to the scene, and Curtis was taken aside to speak to Officer Alan Proctor. Because this is a statement being given on the scene without a lawyer present, one could easily assess this would be the most honest, true to the fact given recollection of events. However, with Reeves's previous work in law enforcement, as well as the general knowledge of self-defense laws, he will try to paint Chad as being the instigator and the aggressor. He is also making this statement prior to knowing that the theater had security cameras that caught the entire ordeal. Pay attention to what he states had occurred and how it differs from what the third-party witnesses claimed happened. This audio was taken from the trial footage and has been enhanced by an audio engineer to improve its quality.
1510. Yep. How you doing, Curtis?
it's good. I mean, it's good.
You all right, Curtis? Can you get out of there, man? All right. There you go. Come on, Curtis. My name's Alan Proctor. We'll step over to my car. You all right? Sit here in front seat. Go ahead. Okay.
I got you. Alan, what do you want to do?
You want to cut from in the front? All right. Curtis, you don't have anything else on you, sir, do you, Mr. Reeves?
I have no idea, my friend.
You want to double check and see if he's got anything else on him?
I think they stripped me.
Yeah, they.
At least three. At least 3 times, maybe 4.
Okay, cool.
That was one of the reasons I wanted the handcuffs loosened. What are you doing? Just put them in the front for you. Alright, don't push on them until we're right. I understand it. Guys, like, turn around, face me. It said kind of straight back into where you sit in the seat.
Curtis, my name's Alan Proctor. I'm a detective with the Sheriff's Office. This is Todd. We're here investigating this shooting that occurred here. I understand that you're a retired TPD cop. I want to make sure that everything is okay here, you know the spill, you know, well, I got a Miranda, okay?
One thing that is key to interrogations is that they start off on a good foot. It has been shown that people in general are more communicative to people that they feel are on their side. You are more likely to share a secret or admit fault towards a friend than someone you don't like. With that understood, Alan Proctor telling Curtis that he's been informed that he is a former officer is an attempt to build trust.
You have the right, your Miranda warnings are, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you in the court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have him or her present with you while you're being questioned. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before any question if you wish. You can decide at any time to exercise these rights, not answer any questions or make any statements. Do you understand each of those rights that I've explained to you?
Yes.
Having those rights in mind, do you want to talk to me about what occurred here?
Yeah, I can understand.
Okay, cool. What happened?
Can I have some, got something to drink? Anything? My throat is as dry as dry can be.
Yes, sir.
And I really didn't get to move that left shoulder any. Well, I do hope the folks sitting on either side of me were paying attention.
What movie were you watching?
Well, we were watching the previews.
Watching the previews?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm only trying to appreciate it.
How long have the lights been down?
Oh, I have no idea.
A couple minutes?
Yeah. Well, the lights have been down for quite a while because they go through all that stuff. Turning off your cell phone, the concession stand and all that stuff.
Right.
So I have no idea on the concept of time. 5 minutes.
Ryan's going to get a couple.
Thank you.
Hey, they're going to go get something to drink.
I'm not trying to do anything other than get the feeling back.
That's all right.
Shoulder stats.
That's all right. How long you been retired?
20 years.
Wow. You started as a young man then, huh?
Yeah, that's it. I spent, let's see, I went on in October of 1966.
Wow.
Took 27 there. I was a director of security at Discovery for 12 years, and I've been trying to retire, enjoy my retirement for about 9 years.
I understand. Well, if he's going to bring you some water.
I don't care if it's cold or it's wet.
All right, sir. I've got some here, but you probably want to drink after me because we've got all kinds of, well, we're going to get you some fresh water.
So here's what we diseased.
Well, I'm not saying that, but I've been a cop almost 30 years myself, so.
I understand.
And I hate to talk to you about all this.
Well, I'll tell you the damn truth. I hate to be here. This is crazy. It was absurd. I tell retired cops that you don't do this. But I've never had anybody jump on my ass like that.
Right.
It was crazy. It really was. And completely uncalled for.
I understand.
I've never had anyone jump on my ass like that. This phrase clearly indicates that in Curtis's retelling, Chad was not only the aggressor, but he violently attacked him with enough force that Curtis felt as if his life was endangered. As we have seen and heard, both on security footage and from the witnesses who were there when the shooting occurred, Chad didn't, quote, jump on anyone's ass. He instead grabbed Curtis's popcorn and flung it back at him. It was childish and petty, but as a former hostage negotiator and SWAT team member, Curtis should have known that his life was not in any imminent threat, especially given that Chad had not gotten out of his seat. As for the statement, quote, it was uncalled for, it really was, many articles and reports around this case have claimed that this was Reeves admitting guilt for the crime, and saying that his own actions were uncalled for. However, that is not the case, as he will go on to state.
So the lights had been down. What happens?
Well, the guy was playing with his cell phone, so I mean, there's something after his cell phone.
Right.
And he told me to fuck off or something like that. So I leaned back and he kept on doing it. So I got up and I went and told the manager up front. I said, look, that's bad. I said, I asked him to turn his cell phone off. He's playing with it. I told him to fuck off. So I said, I appreciate it.
Okay, so he kept doing it.
It's interesting to note the difference in intention between each telling of the same story. According to Nicole and several eyewitnesses, when Curtis told Chad to put his phone away, he did so aggressively, as if it was a command. They also claim that Chad told him that the movie hadn't started in a less than friendly tone, brushing off his order. But to hear Curtis tell it, he was polite and docile, and it was Chad who was angry and rude. But the facts of the situation are the same. Curtis told Chad to put his phone away. Chad said no, and Curtis told the manager at the theater in order to get Chad kicked out.
What manager?
Oh, I don't know, whoever was sitting at the desk. You can't say that with class or not. Whoever was sitting at the front desk up there. I assume he was a man. I don't need tag, I don't know what it said.
But he's a heavy-set guy? Wearing glasses?
Powers of observation fade.
I understand. So what happens then?
Come back in the movie, and the guy put his phone away, and I went by. I said, I see you put it away. I told the manager for no reason. In other words, I went in and ratted him out. If he was going to put it away, I wouldn't have gone, you know.
Right.
And he turns around in his seat, and let's get some. And he says something about he was answering. You're going to have to get the top.
You got it.
And he says something about he was, I don't remember, if it was any of your fucking business, I was texting my daughter or something like that, and you stay the hell out of my face. I think that's when he said that. And his wife was holding back. So I sat down, and I think I got the bag of popcorn from my wife, and suddenly he jumps up and he turns around and he stands in his seat, which was, well, you saw the crime scene, he was off to the right.
Right.
So as he's pushing on the back, there's a crack between us. So I'm leaning back in my chair, I got nowhere to go.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm leaning back in my chair, so he kept on hollering, and I'm not sure what he said, to be honest with you. He said something, and it led me to believe he was going to kick my ass. And I don't know if that's exactly how he phrased it or not. So I'm looking, briefly, I know I can't go anywhere. So I'm leaning all the way back in my chair, as far as I can to get away from him, and suddenly he's virtually on top of me.
This is an outright lie. Chad was not on top of him. He was not pinning the poor old man against his chair with nowhere to go. He did not threaten to kick his ass. Chad had escalated the situation by yelling at Curtis for reporting him over his phone prior to the movie beginning. But the same can be stated to Curtis, as he not only reported Chad, but he came back into the theater and told him as much. Curtis didn't tell Chad he reported him to the manager because he thought it was something that they could laugh about together. According to those present, he did so because he was annoyed at the younger man, and that much was clear from his tone.
So because I'm stretched out, if you look at these pants, the pistol was in the right front pocket.
Uh-huh.
And you're sitting down, there's no way you can get it out. So I'm stretched out trying to get away from him. My left arm is out in front of me, and I think I'm saying either no, 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 or whoa, 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 one or the other. And then suddenly my head was to the right, so he hit me with something.
This is another outright lie. Chad never hit or threw anything at Curtis besides popcorn, which, no matter how old you are, wouldn't be confused with a fist. As you age, your body is slower to heal, meaning that had Chad, an able-bodied young man, struck Curtis in the face, there would be a large mark left. There was none. Again, in order for deadly force to be deemed necessary, Curtis needed to believe his life was at risk.
And I assume it was his fist, but I don't know. Let me see. Something was wrong with my left eye. Anyway, I had him wash it out for me. So he hit me with his fist or with something. I think he had his cell phone in his hand. because I saw the blur of the screen. I guess.
Right.
And I got my left hand out in front of me, and he hits me in the face and knocks my glasses sideways. And there was a young Sumter County deputy that came over right afterwards. And I have frames that you can bend them all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But the left side was stretched out,
So he knocks your glasses off?
they weren't off. They were partially off, and I fixed them where they fit my head again. And for a while there, I was kind of dazed, and it had to be from the strike, even if it was a glazing blow or whatever. But I felt like I had something in my eye. Still do, but not as bad. The fire department guys rinsed it out with some kind of shit. Anyway, I'm leaning back. He's virtually in my lap. I got contact with something with my left hand. It's dark in there. This happened so damn fast.
Mm-hmm.
And the trajectory of the bullet should be upward because I came out of my pocket with it, and surprised I didn't shoot myself in the hand.
Mm-hmm.
But, and good heavens, I didn't need to do that. That was just, I hate to say that. I've counseled cops for.
I didn't mean to do that. That statement right here is damning. Put yourself in Curtis's shoes for a moment. You're in a darkened movie theater and a younger, stronger man begins to yell at you. They tell you they're going to kick your ass and they strike you. You feel as if your life is in danger and you shoot the man in self-defense. Would you, directly after, state that you didn't mean to do it? Most likely not, because you were sure that it was a life or death situation. Had Curtis talked to his lawyer, he would have been advised to state as much, but again, he feels comfortable with Proctor, so he's willing to admit that he shouldn't have shot at all.
How many rounds you shoot?
One. I guess you could say I was scared shitless.
Okay.
I got arthritis in both hands. My back's a freaking wreck. I was on SWAT for 15 years. We thought we were supermen, and then as you get older, you find out you're a physical wreck.
Okay. And you had that gun in your right.
It was in my right front pocket,
Right.
and I'm stretched out. Well, like I said, you can see the pockets here,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't get it out if you're not completely unstretched out. And my seat's sort of like this,
Right.
and I'm holding. I'm whoa, 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 or no, 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 and one or the other, and I'm hit in the face and head beat down. And
You got any idea where you shot him at?
I have no idea. I heard somebody saying he was shot in the chest.
You see anything in his hands?
I think he had a cell phone. When he turned away from me, I looked down and his cell phone was laying at my feet. So I think that's what he hit me in the face with. I didn't see anything else. And I don't know what you guys think.
I hear you. Did your wife? Where was your wife at?
She was sitting on the right hand side. If she's paying attention, and bless her heart, she's, there's no justification for what happened in there. So
Right.
I understand her.
Despite Curtis and Vivian stating that Alan Hamilton is a liar and that she had never claimed that he had no reason to shoot Chad, he blatantly says as much right there.
Where was your son at?
He wasn't there. We were waiting for him to come in. We'd saved the seat for him and all that sort of thing.
And this guy's sitting directly in front of you?
No, his wife, I think, or whoever was with him, this lady was sitting directly in front of him. He was off to the right side, which makes it. Yeah, if he'd have been sitting straight in front of me, I'd have just been whipped because I couldn't do anything.
In the row in front of you, right? Right side row in front of you. Just one chair.
Yeah. What's the status on this guy?
We don't know yet. We got people down there. It's not looking good.
All over us.
Yeah. Did
His wife was trying. Whoever was with him was trying to hold him back.
right?
And,
What is he saying to you?
Fuck off! Get out of my face! Fuck you! I'm talking. I he was sitting there playing with it, and what he said to me was that he was texting his daughter. Well, he wasn't. He was scrolling through it. So I think when I leaned over and asked him to turn the cell phone off, he told me to get the fuck out of his face, and so I knew right away that.
What about just immediately prior to the shot? What is he saying to you?
You're not morally justified in shooting another person, depending upon if they are texting their daughter or playing Candy Crush, but this assertion is made in order to again attempt to make himself look better. Proctor should have let Curtis keep talking, as he was likely going to state something to the effect of, "I knew right away that he was angry or hostile," which means that Curtis came back into the theater and taunted Chad over him having put his phone away after he had gone to management. He knew that he was engaging with someone who would not react well to that information, for lack of a better analogy, willingly kicked a hornet's nest.
And he's saying, I think that's when he's talking about, he's texting his daughter. If there was any of my, there's fucking there 3 or 4 times, I don't know. If it's in my fucking business, or I'll kick your fucking ass, or whatever he was saying was threatening. I gotta be candid with you, I don't remember exactly.
Okay.
It was enough for me to try to look for a way out. And my wife is saying, when I got up to go tell the manager, she said, well, we should have just moved, is what we should have done. And she said that after this hearing.
Right.
And she's absolutely right. That's exactly what we should have done. So, but it's something that, when he jumped up and turned around, it was no problem. I mean, it's just a guy being mouthy.
Right.
When he jumped on the seat and came over in between the crack between the 2 seats, that's when he scared me.
Okay. Now, you say he jumped up. Now, does he come over the seat, or is he still on his row?
His feet were on the seat. At least one of them was, and he was pushing back with his hand, and he was coming over the seat. Now, exactly where his feet were, I don't know. He was coming over into my area, where I'm sitting.
Okay.
And I'm saying, whoa! It's like, this is just a cell phone. This is nothing.
Right.
And I don't know if I was saying no, or whoa. So he's coming over on me. I'm pushing him off with my left hand, and I had a hold of something. I'm assuming it was probably his chest. I don't know.
With your left hand?
I put it on my left hand. Right.
As he's coming over, do you actually make contact with us?
I made contact with something, his arm, his chest, his shoulder. I'm saying, no, whoa. And like they say in the books, it happened so fast until. And then as soon as I pulled the trigger, I said, "Oh shit, what, this is stupid." But again, I'm 71 years old. I don't need to ask with him. I'm a younger man.
How old was he?
I don't know. I'm going to say 35, 40,
maybe. Did you think that he had something other than a cell phone?
I had no idea what he had. All I knew is the guy was coming after me. It's dark. The theater's dark. The show's on. I don't know him. I don't know. I see that he's very explosive, unnecessarily. I don't understand what his motivation is or why he wants to pursue something that's not worth pursuing. I had no idea what his motivation was.
This assessment of the situation would be funny had 2 people not been shot by the person making it. Curtis had engaged Chad twice over, each time with a negative tone according to those present, but when Chad had responded in kind, Curtis states he was unnecessarily explosive, angry, and volatile.
But when he jumped up, like I said, it was not a big deal, but then when he started for me and he started yelling, then it scared the crap out of me. I'm thinking, holy crap, what's going on here? And after he hit me,
You keep saying he hit you, but what does he hit you with?
it's dark. I don't know.
Okay.
I think he was wearing a dark shirt.
Okay.
Yep, I don't know. Fist. Like I said, after he hit me, my face went sideways. My glasses came partially off. By now, I'm stretched out completely. I'm in my seat, kind of like this, with my left hand out. And when I shot, he was. Hell, it should have been pretty darn close to a contact.
Okay.
I know we're trained not to stick it out in front of us, but
Right.
to be honest with you, I was afraid I'd shoot myself. I don't, and all that happened so fast. I didn't say it. I'm thinking, this guy's fixing to do me some bad stuff. If I had it to do over again, it would never have happened. We would have moved. But you don't get do-overs.
So what made you shoot him?
Well, I guess it scared the hell out of me.
Okay.
I thought the guy was fixing to beat the shit out of me.
Okay.
I don't know how else to say that. When my
Well,
glasses,
he never told you that, right?
he said something that led me to believe, and then when the guy starts coming at you with the aggravated position, the contorted face, the fuck yous and stuff like that, I don't think I've ever had anybody get in my face like that, and it scared the crap out of me.
This is just objectively false. Curtis was a former SWAT team member, hostage negotiator, and served in the U.S. Navy. A man throwing popcorn at him was not the first time anyone had ever gotten in his face, and it was by no means the worst time.
If I was 20 years younger or something like that, I might have just wrestled it out with him, but
Okay.
I'm not, all that agility and shit's gone. Actually, I'm very surprised that the last time I shot that little pistol, I couldn't hardly shoot. It had so much arthritis in my hands.
Right.
So,
All right. What else can you tell me?
that's it, I guess. I don't know.
Todd, what do I miss?
Well, I want to kind of just make things a little bit clearer. You talked about it came at you in an aggravated manner.
Facial expression.
So let me ask you this. You keep saying that if you had it to do over, you would do something different. If you had it to do over, you think you could have took him more knowing he didn't have a weapon, that you could have took him physically by...
No, man, I'm not shit. I can't fight. I'm 71 years old. I couldn't take that guy. I couldn't take anybody, not anymore. I retired. I've gained 20, 30 pounds. I got arthritis in my back, my knees, my hands. Yeah, I couldn't take anybody.
You think that it could have been prevented by not using the gun?
There's no way that me or anybody else can speculate on that. I don't think. If I had thought that I wasn't going to get beat up, it would have never happened. I was pretty confident after being hit one time that he wasn't going to stop me.
Well, what we got to do is we got to figure out what we're going to do.
Oh, I know.
And we got to figure out...
Wait. Okay. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You got a lady that was sitting one seat away from me. She should have seen everything.
Elderly little lady?
I don't know. She was just a lady. There was a vacant spot. She should have seen something. My wife was sitting right next to me.
Okay.
She should have. I mean, I don't know what she was doing, but she was right there. And then there was a space where we left for myself, and there was some other people sitting there. And when I said something to them when I left the hotel manager about the cell phone.
And we're talking to everybody just to try to get...
Oh, I know that. Yeah, you talk to everybody before you...
You've handled these kind of cases before. What would you expect us to do? What would you do if you were in those situations?
Oh, man. Well, let me put it this way. If I wasn't afraid of getting hurt or beaten up, I would have never pulled a pistol, first of all. And I've trained cops when I was on the PD. I actually trained Delaware County, a lot of those guys. I would... a lot of things are different. When you're in law enforcement, you have coverage if this happens. And what I tell people is, if this ever happens to you, even if you're 1,000% right and the other people are 1,000% wrong, it's still not a healthy thing to get involved in. That you shouldn't be doing. So I was in training for years, and I still hang around with a bunch of retired SWAT guys. I was SWAT team commander for 15 years, and I still hang around with a bunch of those guys. And we thought we were King Kong for a long time. And as it turns out, as you get older, you end up with all the injuries that you thought had gone away come back. So we're a bunch of cripples now, I guess you could say. We laugh and call ourselves that.
You're not intoxicated or anything like that, right? You know what's going on here?
I don't drink. I don't take drugs. I drank part of a cold drink, and I was eating popcorn when the guy jumped up and turned around. So should be popcorn all over the place in front of where I was sitting, because that went by the wayside almost immediately.
How did that end up by the wayside?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I dropped it or if he knocked it out of my hand, I don't know.
Okay.
All I remember is after I shot him, I laid the pistol on my leg.
Mhm.
Put my glasses back on,
Mhm.
and a young man came over and said he was a Sumter County deputy, and I
Right.
handed him my pistol. I said, here's the pistol. I said, it's got one in the chamber.
Okay.
And then I straightened out my glasses. I saw the popcorn on the floor. Saw a cell phone right in front of me, and I thought it was mine, but apparently it's his. And I'm thinking that's kind of what hit me.
Okay.
What kind of gun?
It's a Kel-Tec 380.
What kind of bullet? I know that's something we can find out.
It's a it's a Thunderball made by okay, now. It's some good stuff.
And you only shot one. To go back to that question I asked you, what would you expect us to do?
Well, I would expect you to, and I hate this term because I've been reading the damn news. I was defending myself. Shit. It don't make it any easier for me to accept it, but that's what I was doing. I was defending myself and what I thought was being some serious injury. The guy was very aggressive, considerably younger.
If this guy had died, do you think it was worth it? Or
Taking
your actions, nothing's worth it.
nothing for it.
But you think the actions that you took were should have been elevated to take his life?
I would like to say no. I would hope that the answer to that question would be no. But unfortunately, it's yes. I felt. I mean, I get a bruise on my arm. It takes 2 months to heal. I couldn't take an aspirin. I got a problem with my right eye. The guy hit me on the left side, and I'm thinking, oh, shit, I don't want to be blind. I don't want to be any of those other things as I get older.
All right.
I haven't been scared by that many people. Since I've been retired, nobody has ever scared me. This guy scared the shit out of me.
Okay.
And how old would you say you thought he was? I know,
Oh, I don't know.
in fact, Fox asked you that. In his 40s, 50s, 30s?
I'm going to say 35, 40. Okay.
And how old did you say you are?
71.
And I missed the part. Can I get your first and last name again? So I don't need all your information.
Curtis Reeves.
Curtis,
R-E-V-E-S?
R-E-E-V-E-S.
All right, sir. What else, Tom?
I think what we need to do is talk to them.
Curtis, we're going to have some people come out. We're going to do GSR on you. We're going to take photographs, photograph your injuries, things like that.
That's yes, sir.
Gunshot residue.
Sure.
All right. Photograph you, things like that. We'll take it one step at a time. All right. Got any question of them? Get.
Well, do this too. Thanks before you leave. Get all the questions you want, because if you're scared the shit out of me, I'm not going to get in trouble.
Well, believe me, you know the system as well as we do.
I know the system 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You understand what we're trying to do, we're doing our job. And you know what, we haven't decided what we are going to do, but if we go talk to them and everything verifies both ways, then we'll do what we think's fair. And
Who's them?
we think's right. All witnesses.
Oh, okay. Oh, you guys have already talked to the witness. You got to talk to the state attorney, right?
I've talked to two witnesses.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's all I've talked to.
Have you talked to my wife?
No, I haven't. I will talk to her. We'll go one step at a time, all right?
She's gonna, like I said, bless her heart, she's the sweetest thing on earth. I don't deserve her. She could never, ever, ever justify this anywhere. She'll be there. She made a comment to me that I don't remember what it was, like, what was that, or
Right.
why'd you do that?
I understand. Well, I think that take it one step at a time. All right. This is Sue Miller here. She's a friend. She'll get you all photographed up.
Well, about the only thing I don't know, they look at the rescue guys. I feel like they got something in the left eye that's still watering.
I don't see anything there, but
No,
you see anything?
no, they rinsed it out. I was kind of pushing on it. Got a good picture, and I think it's right here on the left. That's where.
I got you. Hey, Alan. Yeah. We have helicopters everywhere. So what, if you want to pull up here, where? Like up here where he's going, there's an empty theater, and we'll just walk right inside there and get out of his way to walk his helicopter. Right over there is the number 11 door between these two cars. Right there. Good enough. Here we go. And wait a second, the media's right there too, Dan. If you want to pull right up on the grass, I don't think. Of course, they've already shot us back there. I don't realize they were standing there. They got cameras 15 miles long. You know how that crowd works.
They probably already know who I am.
I love being a cop. To the next round.
I did too.
The initial interview ends there, but about an hour later, Reeves would ask to speak to the police again.
43. It's facing the other way. Curtis, how tall are you?
About 6'1", 6'2".
What do you weigh? You got blue eyes. Look, is there anything else you want to tell me?
Man, I don't think there's anything else to say. I'm sitting back here second guessing myself. Did you hit me? Did I get out of the way? Did this have to happen? Did I need to be here? You guys have given me too much time to think.
One of the questions Curtis asks to himself, one of the things that he is unsure of, is if Chad had hit him. This, according to Curtis, was what put him in fear of his life. In his recollection, Chad standing and striking him so hard that it stretched out his glasses without knocking them off his face, was so terrifying that he shot the man at point-blank range. And now he is questioning if that even occurred. Had he talked to a lawyer, he wouldn't have said any of this.
I understand. This is a life. I'll try to make one for you. I don't know what to say, except that this is a life-changing event that I would have avoided at all costs.
I understand.
It's a life-changing event for me, and certainly this young man has a family. And I think I was mentioning to your deputy there earlier, thinking it over. In all my law enforcement career, I don't think I've ever been that scared that quick. Does that make sense to you?
I understand.
I mean, usually something builds and then just something explodes in your face.
Well, we've talked to everybody involved.
Okay.
And nobody sees a punch being thrown.
Right. Well, it's a dark theater, right?
And
Despite saying only a minute earlier that he doesn't remember being hit and doesn't know if he was actually struck, is now saying that all the witnesses who said no punch was thrown simply didn't see it because it was a dark theater. But Curtis's own account of his body, had he been hit, he would have been incapacitated. It would take months to recover, but there wasn't a scratch on him.
he's dead.
Oh.
I'm sorry, man.
I'm sorry.
Because Curtis, I'm sorry because I don't have a choice. Because understand what's going on here. I've got somebody that I respect a great deal, You put your rear end on the line a lot of days.
That doesn't have anything to do.
Yeah, it does. It does. I've been a cop 30 years myself, sir, so I hate to do what I have to do sometimes, but I don't have a choice right now.
I don't know what to say. I'm sitting back here, I'm thinking to myself, my life is ruined, his life is ruined, my family's life is ruined, his family's life is ruined.
I'm going to have to arrest you on a second degree. I've talked it over with the state, and my command staff and everybody's in agreement. You'll have a bond. You know, all the procedures. I'll make sure that they're aware that you're law enforcement. They will treat you with respect, just like if you know how it's just like anybody else. They will take care of you, sir.
Okay, now, my wife is sitting next to me. You're saying that she never saw that guy. The guy close to me and saw me push him back.
No, sir. She never saw a punch.
Well,
She says that he leans over. But, you know, and I asked her point blank, did you ever see a punch? No, I never saw a punch.
I never saw it either.
Did it happen?
I've been sitting back here second guessing myself. I got hit in the left side of my face and my tapeworm got my glasses knocked off. There was nobody else there, man. There was nobody else there.
Did your wife see your glasses knocked off?
Not that, you're going to have to ask her.
Because she says no.
Well, they didn't come all the way off. They came sideways. That's the only... They didn't come all the way off. If they had come all the way off, we would have gone on the floor.
I understand.
Been able to find him.
All right, sir.
Yeah, I don't... well, I guess at this point in time, I have no alternative. I'm trying to cooperate, and
I appreciate that.
I guess I better get myself a damn attorney. There goes my retirement.
I'm sorry, buddy. Curtis. Thank you. I'm sorry, like I said.
In these interviews, Curtis did nearly everything wrong. By the end, he admits guilt, states he was the one who started both confrontations, admits he was never hit in the face, and goes so far as to admit that he shouldn't have shot the man as he wasn't really in fear of his life. This should have been a slam dunk case for the Olsen family, but it was anything but. Following the shooting, the news descended on the story, and as Curtis claimed in the interrogation footage, he got a lawyer, and immediately his story changed. No longer was he unconfident that he had been struck. Now he was certain of it. The punch just managed to be missed by his wife, the woman seated next to him, multiple third-party witnesses, and the security camera. His lawyers put out a statement affirming that Curtis, as an elderly man, was scared that Chad was going to kill him and his wife, and so he sought to defend himself using the Stand Your Ground law. Stand Your Ground laws provide that people may use deadly force when they reasonably believe it is going to be necessary to defend against certain violent crimes. Under such a law, people have no duty to retreat before using deadly force in self-defense, so as long as they are in a place where they are lawfully present. This means that Curtis, who had instigated both encounters with Chad, previously admitted to not being sure if he had been struck in the face, and had claimed that shooting Chad was entirely unnecessary on his part, and would be arguing that it was necessary. The defense would have to overcome their own client's statements. However, it would be 8 long years before Curtis would have his day in court, at which point his defense attorney, Dino Michaels, had come up with their argument, which was basically that, even though all Chad had done was thrown popcorn at him, he was so old that this was a sign of deadly force. He claimed that since Chad was younger, stronger, and posed a more physical threat towards Curtis, Chad had no other options to de-escalate the situation, and was forced to protect himself through shooting him in the chest. Nicole came out against this statement, claiming that it was insulting to the facts of what had occurred. Years had passed since the event, and by the time it went to trial, Curtis was looking noticeably older. He needed to walk with a cane and had lost a considerable amount of hair, which worked to make him look more vulnerable. On February 24th, 2022, Curtis Reeves took the stand in his own defense. For the first hour and 40 some odd minutes, the defense focused their questioning on Curtis's age and training. They went through his life, his times in the Navy, his time in the police, and working security for Busch Gardens, and Curtis focused on how he had seen multiple instances of violence. He never went into explicit detail about times he had been previously attacked, or instances in the force where he needed to take measures to defend himself, but stated that there were many, and each came with their own issues. After going over his work history in a vague but purposeful manner, Curtis then spoke about his health and the various ailments that had befallen him. He had a herniated disc, issues with his knees, and various other medical issues that caused him tremendous pain when he so much as walked. He discussed how standing on his feet for long periods of time was impossible, and that he often used the cane to move around. The defense was also sure to clarify that he didn't always need a cane, as he had previously been seen without it. This line of questioning was made to serve one purpose, and that was to obviously age him. In our society, we view the elderly as weak and incapable. We see them as completely unable to take care of themselves, and so when you point to this man and discuss all of his medical maladies, the immediate thought is, well, if he can't walk, how could he have defended himself? It should also be noted that 8 years earlier, when he shot Nicole and Chad at the Cobb Theater, he didn't need a cane. He had certain medical issues, but he was incredibly healthy for his age. The defense also showcased all of the permits that Curtis had at the time of the shooting, and at that point, nearly 2 hours into Curtis's questioning, they finally began to discuss the shooting.
Getting back now to the theater, I believe we left off where you had been waiting a bit in the lobby for Matt, you and Mrs. Reeves, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
And then you indicated that you proceeded to go into the theater after buying some popcorn and a drink, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so when you went into the theater, where did you sit?
We sat on the very last row, almost in the middle of the theater. There's a wall that at the very back of the theater, there's a wall. We were right up against that wall.
Was it still pretty early on, meaning that the previews
Yes, sir.
were not playing? You were just there for a period of time?
The lights were up. There may have been something on the screen. We weren't paying much attention. It was probably housekeeping stuff like the concession stand, that sort of stuff.
Okay. And can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether Mr. and Mrs. Olson were likewise seated in front of you and your wife?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long of time passed during that period of time before the previews started?
I'm going to guess 10 minutes maybe, or I don't know exactly, 10 or 15 minutes because we got there rather early.
Okay. And during those 10 or 15 minutes, did you notice whether Mr. Olson was using his phone?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And did you, during that time, at any point in time, interrupt his using of the phone and tell him to stop using the phone or anything like that?
Not until after the preview started.
Okay. And so for those 10 or 15 minutes, you and Vivian sat there, discussed whatever you all were discussing, is that correct?
I had texted my son and told him where we were sitting so he could find us, and other than that, just talking, I guess.
Okay. At some point in time, does an announcement come on?
I think right about the end of the advertisement says the turn off your cell phone graphic, I guess you could say, and then they announced to turn off your cell phones, if I remember correctly.
Okay. And did the previews then start?
Yes, sir, they did.
Okay. And so the previews start, the announcement has already come on, and were you looking at the previews?
Yes, sir,
And was your wife, Mrs. Reeves, also looking at the previews?
as far as I know.
And why were you looking at the previews?
Well, that's kind of how we decide what shows we're going to see. We kind of look at the trailers
To see what's coming?
to see what's coming, and then we'll decide whether or not we want to come.
At some point in time while you were viewing those previews, did you notice a light shining in the theater?
Yes, sir, I did. I noticed off to my right, over who turned out to be Mr. Olson's left shoulder, was a cell phone.
And was that light shining on you?
It was shining in my face. Yeah, I tried to adjust my seat position, but it was still shining in my face.
What did you do at that point?
I waited for a while after they started because I don't know how long. I waited to see if he would put it away, if he was interested in what was on the screen or not, and it never went away.
And so what did you do, realizing that it was not going to be turned off as the announcement had requested of all patrons?
Let's keep our cell phones off, please.
When I realized that it wasn't going to go off and that it was still shining in my face, I leaned over and requested that he turn his phone off. I said, "Would you mind turning your phone off, sir?"
Okay. And so when you're saying leaned over, you were seated in your seat.
Yes, sir.
And tell the ladies and gentlemen what you mean by leaning over.
Well, when you're in a theater like that, I don't know how far apart we were, but I wasn't communicating with anybody but this gentleman. So I would lean over to get a little bit closer to him so that I didn't have to yell at him, and I just asked him if he'd put his phone away.
Okay. At that point in time, were the previews playing?
Yes, sir.
Were the previews loud?
Loud, and the lights had gone down. It was darker, but that's what I remember.
Okay. And so what response did you get from Mr. Olson when you leaned forward to tell him, that was quietly, you said?
Yes, sir.
To please turn his phone off?
It was a fuck off, get the fuck out of my face was the response that I got back. He was facing away from me, but he was saying it loud enough to where I heard it.
And so what did you do at that point?
I sat back in my chair and still thinking that he might put it away.
Did you overhear some additional conversations after that statement was made to you?
I heard him talking because he was talking loudly, and I think he was talking to his wife or maybe to the theater in general because it was loud, and I perceived that his wife had reached over with one of her arms, and my thought was that she was probably trying to get him to quiet down.
Okay. And so what are you doing at this point in time? Are you just seated back?
Yes, sir. I waited to see if he was going to turn his phone off.
Did you attempt to try to hear what was being discussed between Mr. Olson and his wife?
No, sir. I don't think I did. It was loud. I could hear him talking. I never heard her say anything, and I really just picked up a word every now and then.
Okay. So, how long do you think you waited before you decided to leave the theater?
I think somewhere between right around 3/4 of a minute, I guess, half a minute, 3/4 of a minute. And it was still prominently displayed and still shining in my eyes.
Okay. And so what did you decide to do at that point?
Well, I decided that if I couldn't get him to turn it off, that it was between him and the theater. They're the ones that said you can't use one. It wasn't between him and I. So I again, being not necessarily gentle, but I just leaned over and I said, "You leave me no alternative other than to notify the management."
And how did he respond to that?
He didn't give a fuck what I did. And that was pretty loud, and he didn't turn around either. He was still facing away from me.
And so what did you do at this point?
Well, he was saying some other things that I could pick up a word every now and again. He was being kind of loud and stuff like that, but I didn't pick up any words. So I had a bag of popcorn in my hand. I handed it to my wife, and I started down the aisle towards the end aisle.
Mr. Reeves, why at that point in time didn't you just move your seats?
Well, the guy was just being mouthy. I mean, I had a career of dealing with people like that. It didn't present a threat to me. I probably didn't think about how it affected my wife, but to me, it was not, I saw no threat to it at all.
And so you get up to do what?
I got up to go to, down the aisle to the end to go to the manager's office.
Okay, and it was still dark in the theater?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as you were leaving the theater, did you speak to any of the patrons where you were trying to get by?
Well, yeah, there's not a lot of space in there, and I didn't want to bump this guy's chair, so yeah, I used I used the wall behind me or behind my wife to kind of steady me as I walked down the aisle, so I didn't bump into his chair or step on anybody else's feet.
Okay. And you proceeded out?
Yes, sir.
And where did you go?
I went down the stairs and I went out front, and there was a young man at the where they take the tickets, and I asked him if there was a manager nearby, and he pointed me towards the guy that was sitting in the kiosk out front.
Okay. And so when you get to the individual that was at the kiosk out front, was there somebody else that was speaking to that manager at the time?
Yes, there was a lady standing right around the counter from me she would have been on my right, and she was conversing with the manager and back and forth at that time.
Did you interrupt them at all during that process?
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. Did you wait for your turn to speak to the manager?
Yes, sir, I waited until he acknowledged me.
And can you tell the ladies and the jury exactly what you told the manager at that moment?
I told him that there was I said I kind of apologized to him and said I feel kind of strange doing this, but I'm a guy complaining on another guy. I said, but I've got a guy sitting in front of me that is using his cell phone, and I asked him politely to put his cell phone away, and I said he used a lot of profanity, and I said I don't feel comfortable talking to this guy again. Could you help me out?
Reeves's perception of the event seems to change in order to suit what he is trying to portray. In these few moments alone, he has said a couple of notable things. First is that when he initially stood to go talk to management, he did so not because he was afraid of Chad and believed him to be aggressive, but because he believed the conflict was between Chad and the entire theater. Olson was breaking the theater's rules, and he was just informing them of that. He even bent down to tell Chad that he was going to do so before he did it. He didn't view Olson as a threat then, but by the time he got to the management desk, he did. But by the time he informed management, he stated that he didn't feel comfortable talking to Olson again after he was told to fuck off by the younger man. He felt intimidated by the younger man and didn't feel safe talking to him again, which begs the question, why did he re-engage with Olson in a negative fashion when he re-entered the theater? These questions are important because we are talking about self-defense, which relies on the premise that the person who used lethal force was in fact defending themselves, but it was Curtis who chose to engage Chad twice over, with the knowledge that he had a weapon on his person, in case things were to escalate. Curtis was well aware that he had irritated the man in front of him when he originally engaged with him, and he would have been aware that the man was younger and more physically fit, meaning he was aware that should he negatively engage this man again, and the issue were to escalate, he wouldn't be able to defend himself without using the weapon he had on his person. Meanwhile, Chad had no reason to believe that Curtis had a gun on his person, given that the Cobb Theater had a no-weapon policy. An argument could be made that Curtis was acting on that knowledge, purposely engaging the young man in a negative fashion because he knew that he had a gun on him. Curtis didn't feel unsafe engaging the younger man, because he was prepared to shoot him the moment he felt slightly threatened, which obviously does not qualify as self-defense. You cannot pick a fight with a person because you have a weapon on you, and are willing to kill them should the conflict escalate.
Okay, and what did he say?
He responded that he would take care of it.
Okay. So where did you go then?
I went back in the theater.
And did you go back into your role?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did you try to get back to your seat in a polite and courteous way?
Yeah, going in and out, I told people, most people don't go out right after the show starts. It's kind of awkward, so I kind of felt awkward leaving at that particular point, but I said things like, sorry, I have to get by, excuse me, that sort of thing. Yes, sir.
Okay. Were you mad?
No, sir.
What was his demeanor as he left the theater?
He seemed to be shuffling his feet fairly quickly. As he passed my seat, he was mumbling to himself, and it sounded very agitated in that mumbling. And he also hit my seat and the back of my head as he was passing.
I was on the right of Mr. Reeves, yes.
Okay, because I might have to orientate you a little bit. Did Mr. Reeves walk by you to get out of the row?
Yes, he did. He turned to go out the row. He was walking quickly. He was mumbling. He seemed to be upset or irate about something, and he went down the row and down the stairs.
When you got up off your seat to go tell the manager, were you mad?
No, sir.
You heard Mrs. Roy come and testify before this jury. When you were leaving the theater, were you grumpy?
No, sir.
Did you tell the manager where you were seated?
Yes, sir, I did.
As you were walking back to your seat, or did you get back to your seat?
I got back to my seat, and then I took the popcorn bag from my wife and sat down and got it from her. One or the other, I got it from her.
Okay, and during that time period, did you hear Mr. Olson making any statements?
I heard him. He wasn't talking to me. I don't know who he was talking to. He was talking, again, kind of loud. And he was saying something about the manager and the theater. I didn't pick up every word. I was standing up, and it was something about the theater and the manager, and he had been kind of staring in my direction, and I don't know. He wasn't talking to me, but he was speaking out loud.
He was staring at your directions as you were walking?
As I came back in, yes, sir. He kind of looked in my direction.
Okay. And was he accusing you of turning him into the manager?
I kind of interpreted it as that, but I didn't hear those exact words. It was, I think he was trying to relay that he was not happy.
Okay. And then what did you do at this point?
I tried to, I think the word is diffuse the situation, so I made a comment to him about if I had known that you had put your phone away, I wouldn't have involved the manager.
Okay. Now, Mr. Reeves, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what happens at this very moment.
As I sit down, he's still talking loudly, and he's facing away from me. I can pick up a word every now and then, but I don't know what he's actually saying. And a movement caught me off on the right side of my eye, and I turned my head to look at him, and almost immediately he had turned and was on his feet, and I had something between me and the theater screen that I saw just a flash of a reflection off of. And then everything went kind of fuzzy.
Did you believe at that point that you had been hit?
Yes, sir, I did.
He had never been hit.
And where do you think that you were hit at that moment?
I think I was hit on my glasses on the top left side. That was where I felt the impact, I think. And I wasn't sure how it had happened because I didn't think he was that close to me. So it had to be something else.
That's what you thought?
Yes, sir.
This blur that you saw, were you able to describe it?
It was like a flash. It was between me and the screen. It was very close to me. It just didn't compute. I had no idea what it was at that time.
At that moment, did it appear that he was coming into your space?
At that point, I noticed that he was standing up. He was yelling a lot of profanities. There was threats and who the fuck do you think you are? I was texting my fucking daughter. the F word seemed to be his primary vocabulary at that point. Who the fuck do you think you are? I'm going to fuck you up or something. Now that's not exact, because I'm picking up bits and pieces, because this guy is very volatile and active. He's trying to come over the seats.
Did you try initially to get up?
I was in a seated position, and when I first detected the profanity and stuff, he was trying to come over the seat. He was trying to. I felt like he was trying to either that or get to me, one or the other. It appeared to me that I mean I've never been in that kind of a position before, and I realized immediately, and I don't know how, whether he got onto us. I don't know what happened, but when he stood up, I'm sitting down in a completely defenseless position. I'm looking up at this guy, and he looked like a monster standing there. He was mad. He exhibited explosive behavior, both verbally and physically. And I had seen his wife, who had tried to control him when he jumped up, and she had a hold of his arm, and he had turned around. At that point, I was focused on him.
Why at that point were you just focused on him?
He was a threat. He was a threat that was very close to me. And the closer a threat is to you, the less time you have to react to anything that happens. I had tried to get further away from my wife because he was after me, and I had leaned as far as I could to my left, and I had kind of straightened my right leg out towards where my wife was sitting, and I didn't want to again hit his chair. He just appeared to me like he was out of control. That it was like his wife was kind of hanging onto his arm or his shoulder. She was in the peripheral. I saw him. He was reaching for me or trying to come over the seat again. It was at that point I couldn't get up. I was trapped. I couldn't go left or right, and even beyond being seated in front of this guy that's standing up in front of me, I'm leaning to the side, completely defenseless. I could do nothing to defend myself.
At some point, do you decide to pull your weapon?
At some point after he's reached, either trying to come over the seat or tried to hit me, at some point I made a decision that I had no alternative. The guy's, in my opinion, he's completely out of control. He's not settling down, and his wife is trying to hold him back, or appear to be trying to hold him back, or control him. I guess that would be the right word. And I've never been encountered by somebody exhibiting that uncontrolled anger or rage, and all of the perceptors that you could imagine, whether it's verbal, physical, expression. At some point at that time, I had no other choice, and I reached for my pistol.
Now, after reaching from your pistol, do you see some hands coming in your direction?
I'm pretty much zeroed in on him, and I know I made some comments at some point in there as this was happening. It was very quick. In my mind, the event itself was very fast, and I didn't think I had enough time to respond. And at that point, I was concerned that he was so much above me and so full of rage, I guess you could say, that he was going to strike me with all the strength that he had or he could put together. I figured that this was the end of the line for me. I thought that at the very least I'd be seriously injured, if not killed.
Curtis, did you feel at that point in time that you had the capabilities to ward him off with your bare hands?
I was pretty sure I couldn't do that. That was never a question. In the position that I was in, there's no way I could have done that.
you fired a shot from your pistol?
One shot.
What happens after you fire that shot?
As soon as he turns away, then he's no longer a threat. So I lay down the pistol, and then I try to determine how bad I'm hurt. And then I realized that my glasses, the reason that everything is blurry is because my glasses were kind of sideways. I'm gonna call it askew. This left piece here was down on my cheek, and my glasses were kind of, I guess you could call it askew. That's when I realized that the reason everything was so blurry was because my glasses had been knocked off.
Well, were they knocked off or were they askew?
Askew.
Okay. Were those the glasses you were wearing?
Yes, sir.
Okay. May I see them?
Yes, sir.
May I approach?
You may. It's okay if I look at them as well? Yes.
Curtis, these are the glasses that you had,
Yes, sir.
and don't be insulted. These are old man glasses that can switch and turn in every direction known to man. I'm not
Yep.
gonna break them,
Yes, sir.
right? I've done this before, right?
Yes, sir.
And these are the glasses that you were wearing that day.
Yes, sir, it is.
Curtis, did you want to shoot Chad Olson?
I didn't want to shoot anybody. I came to the theater with my family to enjoy a movie, not to be attacked by some guy that's out of control.
He hadn't been attacked by some guy who was out of control. Again, all that happened prior to the shooting, based on third-party testimony and the security camera footage, was Curtis had popcorn thrown on him. He hadn't been attacked, he hadn't been physically violated, and there hadn't been anything to indicate that Chad was going to do so. His characterization of Chad is highly erroneous, especially in comparison to his wife's statements. Vivian was just as defenseless as her husband, if not more so, and she stated that Chad hadn't been nearly as aggressive as her husband had claimed he was the day of the shooting. She also said the shooting was unnecessary, as they hadn't been in danger.
The most dangerous of individuals are what? Individuals that are out of control.
Absolutely. Anybody that's not controllable, their rage is so powerful, their thought patterns, in my opinion, are only towards whatever they feel anger towards. They're not influenced by the surrounding area.
Had you ever in your entire life seen anybody act the way Mr. Olson acted in a movie theater? You ever seen anybody? Did you ever experience anything like that?
I've never experienced anything like that inside of a theater or anywhere else. That was a complete surprise. It was a shock that somebody would actually do that. And I guess the thing that I couldn't understand, and all this passed through my mind right away, is why is somebody acting like that over such a trivial thing? I still haven't figured that out.
Why were you trying to create distance at some point in time in this situation?
Well, any time that you're involved in any kind of and I'm going back to training and exposure and experience for years, any time that you're going to be involved in something like that, the first thing that you want to do is get away from the individual. You want to, that would diffuse it. If you could get away from them, then whatever is going to happen may not happen. If you can't, then you're like in my case, I had nowhere to go and no way to get there.
The reason this question is being asked is simple. Curtis stated that when he leaned back in his seat, he did so because Chad was coming at him, and he couldn't get his gun. On the footage, before Chad was reaching over to grab the popcorn, Curtis leaned back and immediately reached into his pocket. It seemed that Curtis was already prepared to shoot Chad without provocation. However, now he is stating that that is not the case. Instead, he is trying to make himself small and distance himself from Olson.
How quickly did all this happen?
In my mind, it was the blink of an eye from from the time I sat down until it was over.
Once you fired the shot, did you say, "Throw popcorn at me, will you"?
I had no knowledge at all about that popcorn in my statement. The deputies asked me that, I think. I never saw the popcorn until I saw it on the floor. I had no idea what had happened to the popcorn.
Did you shoot Mr. Olson because of popcorn?
I shot Mr. Olson because I thought he was going to seriously injure me or potentially kill me.
May I approach? Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 55, and I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 51, and ask you if you recognize those exhibits.
Yes, sir. These are the photographs that the ID tech from the sheriff's office took, I think, in the theater.
Did you get an opportunity to see yourself in a mirror while you were seated in the front seat of a patrol cruiser?
Yes, sir. The detectives put me in the passenger when they were conducting the interview, and I asked them if I could use their little mirror.
And why did you ask them if you could use their mirror?
After I had, my eye was still bothering me, and I had already.
Which eye was that?
Sir?
Which eye was that?
Left eye.
Okay.
Yes. My eye was still bothering me, and I wanted to see if I could see anything in it.
Okay. And does those pictures fairly and accurately depict what you saw in the mirror?
Yes, sir, it does. Yes, sir.
Okay. And what do you see on the left eye, the corner of your left eye, in the state's exhibits?
Yeah, it appears to me that the left corner of my eye, going down across, I don't know, this area right here, from up here on my top of my eyelid down to this little corner there.
Now, Mr. Reeves, when you put the firearm on your lap, why did you do that?
Because you don't know who else is in the theater, you don't know who else is armed, and I didn't want to be I wasn't a threat to anybody else. I was only trying to defend myself. I didn't want anybody else to think that I was a threat.
Is that training? Does that come from training and years of training as a law enforcement officer?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. And so you put that gun on your left knee?
I put it on my knee. I think it was my left knee.
After you put that gun on your left knee, did someone come and pick up that gun from your left knee?
Yes, sir. As I was adjusting my glasses and examining my face, I didn't see his badge, but a deputy walked up, and I heard him say that he was a deputy, and so when I leaned back, I pointed at my pistol. It was on my lap, so he picked it up.
Okay. Now, at that moment, were you able to look down at what was in between your feet?
As I put my glasses back on and the deputy was standing there, I looked down between my feet, and yes, I did. I saw the cell phone between my feet.
Madam Clerk, may I see that cell phone? May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Mr. Reeves, I'm going to show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit number 24, and ask you to take a look at the interior of that exhibit and tell me if you recognize that exhibit.
Yes, sir, I think I do. The white spot up here, that kind of caught my eye. I think it was laying on the floor like that. But this is what it looks like, yes, sir.
Is that the phone that was located between your legs?
Yes, sir.
Now, Mr. Reeves, you were arrested right there in seat number 9, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, by law enforcement.
Yes, sir.
And you were taken out in handcuffs to a vehicle, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you were interviewed.
Yes, sir.
And it's my understanding then you were interviewed by Detective Proctor and Detective Koenig, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The interview that you had with Detective Proctor and Detective Koenig were recorded, right?
Yes, sir.
And did you answer all of their questions?
Yes, sir, I did.
And did you encourage them to ask you any question that they needed to ask you there in that interview?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you waived your rights to remain silent
Yes, sir, I
that
did.
day, is that correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
And you told them that you wanted to cooperate,
Yes, sir.
and did you?
Yes, sir.
When prosecution would question Curtis on cross-examination, they would be attempting to do multiple different things. First, they wanted to contest the general assertion that Curtis was a harmless older man. He had worked in the SWAT team, been a hostage negotiator, and had decades of experience with law enforcement. He had more knowledge and was more capable than the average man in terms of shooting and self-defense. Secondly, he wanted to showcase how instead of using his knowledge in de-escalation and conflict, he chose to shoot a man who had at that point only thrown popcorn at him. And thirdly, they wanted to prove that Chad had never thrown his phone at Curtis. Let's observe and see if they were successful.
Go ahead.
Based on the extensive conversation that was had on direct examination regarding your background, isn't it true that if an object, a non-deadly object, is thrown at you, thrown at anybody, you can't kill that person for throwing that object at them, correct?
If it's, that's kind of a hard question to answer because
I'm going to give you an example.
depend-
I'll give you an example. Okay? I'll give you an example. Someone throws a plastic water bottle at another person. It hits that person, falls to the ground. You can't kill that person for doing that, correct? That's the fact pattern. That's all it is. That's all I'm asking you.
that would, under those conditions, no, sir.
Now, you were talking about all the different units that you've been assigned to at the Tampa Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, if you came across somebody that had a firearm, for example, you could hold them at gunpoint, correct?
As a civilian,
No,
as a law enforcement officer,
correct.
you would, if you came up,
Does
You-
that-
you
does that
had-
same objections concerning his position as a police officer, where he wasn't a police officer at the time of this incident?
Okay, I'll rephrase it. Okay.
Thank you.
As a civilian, isn't it true that you could pull out a firearm and just point it at somebody in self-defense?
in self-defense?
Correct.
Yes, sir.
And you were indicating that you had been trained in de-escalation tactics, correct?
Yes, sir.
And de-escalation tactics are when you can reduce the intensity of a conflict, right?
Yes, sir.
And a way that you could do that would be to loudly say something, use words, correct?
I think it would depend on circumstances.
I understand. I'm just asking you of all the different ways, right? So one of the ways that you could do that is you could use words.
Yes.
Okay. Another way you could do it, as we indicated before, is that if you had a firearm, you could simply point it at somebody.
I don't think that's a good idea. If you point a firearm at someone, you have no idea what their capabilities are. It could be theirs that they could take it away from you very quickly.
Okay. But at a distance, they couldn't do that.
Not at a distance.
Okay. So you could use words. You could point a gun at them. You could also do a combination of both, correct?
Are you talking about as a civilian or as a law enforcement officer?
Well, you were talking about the de-escalation tactics that you were trained in, so that's what I'm talking
Oh,
to.
okay.
I'm talking about your de-escalation tactics. I mean, you testify that you're trained in all of this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so you could really utilize that at any time, right? That's part of your training.
As a law enforcement officer, yes, sir.
Okay, are you saying that those tools that you learned as a law enforcement officer, you would just abandon them and not use them in the real world? Meaning de-escalation tactics?
I don't think I would point a gun at anybody being a civilian.
Well, I hate to be the one to tell you this, but you did, and you're on trial for it right now. But all right.
Okay, what I'm asking you is this. You've learned in all the training that you can de-escalate a situation by using words, right?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. And you can also de-escalate a situation, if necessary, to raise a gun without firing it.
Yes, I suppose it may not be a good idea if you're not a law enforcement officer.
Okay, and I understand you're not going to give me that. Now, in the past, when someone's had a weapon, you've held them at gunpoint and told them to drop their weapon, correct?
Yes, sir.
You give them every opportunity before you would fire a shot, correct?
Absolutely.
Because that would be a last resort, correct?
Correct.
And I think you indicated that at Busch Gardens you are also trained in de-escalation tactics, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And at Busch Gardens you're dealing with other civilians, correct? Just people who are at a park.
Yes, sir.
And you weren't law enforcement at Busch Gardens, you were security for Busch Gardens.
Correct.
So you were using non-law enforcement de-escalation tactics at Busch Gardens with just regular citizens who were at the park.
I think their de-escalation is kind of universal.
Right, and that's my point. That's kind of what I'm getting at with you.
Right.
Is that you can use these universal de-escalation tactics to calm things down, especially in a movie theater.
Correct.
Now, you indicated that you were on several different units at the Tampa Police Department, correct?
Yes, sir.
You indicated that you were on patrol,
Correct.
went to a surveillance unit, fugitive warrants, robbery, homicide, and SWAT, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, would you agree with me those are kind of adrenaline-filled units?
Yes.
And obviously by participating in these units, you kind of like for the lack of a better word, the dangerousness component of it. You like to be involved in that type of activity, correct?
I would never say that.
Okay. Well, you didn't shy away from those assignments. You volunteered to go into those positions.
That's correct.
All right. You actually gravitated towards those positions. I mean, every one of those would be a position that entails that an angle, so to speak, of danger.
I think the opportunities were there. I didn't consciously gravitate towards them.
Okay, well, when they opened up, did anybody force you to go into those positions?
No, sir.
Okay, you volunteered to go into those positions.
Yes, sir.
And also, when the positions in the command opened up, you went to apply for those and eventually ended up in a position of command at the department, correct?
Yes, sir.
So you would gravitate towards positions where you would be in control.
I gravitate to positions to make more money.
Okay? But it's also, you were able to control people, correct?
That came with the promotion, yes, sir.
Now, there was a certificate that you had about firearms instruction. If you are firing from the hip, what do you do with the other hand? How do you prevent yourself from shooting yourself?
The training that we used to train is that you kind of put your left hand out in front of you. You kind of hang it out there to balance out your body.
Okay, so you put it out in front of the firearm?
No, you put it out kind of to your side. And I don't think it's called hip shooting. I think what it's called is instinctive, or I think I've heard index shooting, I think it is. You try to maintain a body positive position, which means you stay perpendicular to the target, and you kind of put your left hand a little out in front of you so that you're kind of balanced when you come out with the firearm.
Okay, and when you're sitting, isn't it true that you would take the other hand? So for example, you shot with your right hand in this case, correct?
Correct.
And so when you're in a seated position, so you don't shoot yourself, you took your left hand and you placed it close to your body, correct?
No, I've never trained to do that.
Okay. But that would be a way that you would avoid shooting yourself if you instinctively took your left hand and brought it across your body.
Yeah, but I've never done that. Never.
You've never done that before?
I've never trained that way. No, sir.
Did you do that in this case?
No, sir.
You didn't take your left hand and put it close to your chest?
Not intentionally.
Well, I'm asking you if you did.
I don't have any idea. I think I had, if I'm not mistaken, a bag of popcorn.
Okay. So just to be clear, when you fired the shot, you didn't take your left hand and put it close to your body to avoid shooting your own left hand?
No, sir.
Okay.
Not intentionally.
Now, you indicated that you had a license, correct? And that was an HR 218 license?
Yes, sir.
All right. And you got that in February of 2013?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And in order to qualify for that license, you have to shoot a 40-round course, correct?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And you qualified on both the pistol and revolver, correct?
Yes, I did.
So that would be 80 rounds that you had to shoot then, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And again, that was in February of 2013.
Right.
When you qualified with the pistol, you had a magazine, obviously.
Yes.
And how many rounds would fit in that magazine?
I don't remember.
Okay, and in order to load the magazine, obviously you have to press the bullets in. This is going to sound silly, but press the bullets into the magazine, correct?
Well, you pull down with the magazine spring, and you just drop the rounds in the top of the mag.
Okay, and you just have to keep the pressure on the spring each and every time for each and every bullet, right?
You just hold it down and put them all in at once.
And each time you load one, you have to push a bullet in, so there's a little bit more resistance each time, just a little bit.
No, you hold the spring down, and you put them all in at once. You just drop them in one at a time. You only depress the spring once.
And for a revolver, there's 6 bullets in the revolver?
I don't remember if it was a 6-shot or an 8-shot.
Nevertheless, there's 80 different rounds that you had to load during this course, correct?
There's directions on how many rounds to load, yes, sir.
Obviously, you didn't have any difficulty doing that because you were able to get your license.
Correct.
Now, you were obviously present when your daughter Jennifer Shaw testified, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And she was talking about how you ride your bicycle, I think it was a road bike and a mountain bike, several times a week in 2013, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. And apparently you need coordination for that, right?
Boy, yes, sir.
Okay, I mean, so when you're testifying about the balance difficulties that you've been experiencing for years, you were okay to ride the bike?
Correct.
And you would ride the bike on trails?
No.
No?
On paved surface, I'm sorry. It's a Withlacoochee Trail,
Okay.
but it's
And-
paved.
All right, and when you were to go riding, you'd have to pick the bike up, you'd have to put it on the car, drive over to wherever you were using the trail, take the bike off, right?
Correct.
And you heard her testify that on 5 to 6 occasions, the two of you would go to shoot sporting clays, right?
Correct.
And we heard everything that she described about how that works, how you have to load the shotgun, unload it, everything that she indicated obviously is correct, right?
I think you load your rounds by dropping them in the ejection port rather than pushing them in the bottom. Yes, sir. That was the only difference.
All right, and you were able to track the target as it went across. Now, let me ask you this. Wouldn't be a good idea to do that if you're experiencing balance problems, right?
I never had a balance problem handling a weapon.
Okay. And you could obviously walk the course. You chose not to take the golf cart, but you walked it instead.
Correct.
She described the kayaking, walking around the neighborhood, pulling the wagon, archery in the backyard, all the yard work covered during direct examination as well, correct?
Correct.
Let's talk about the movie theater. Lighting-wise, the lighting was obviously good enough for you to find your seat, correct?
The lights were on when we came in.
Okay. But at some point in time, you did leave to go talk to the manager.
Yes, sir.
All right, and that was during the previews.
Yes, sir.
All right. And the lighting was good enough for you to leave and come back without any difficulty.
The majority of the lighting was coming from the screen, from the shows.
Okay. But what I'm asking you is this, is when there was enough light for you to leave your seat, go to the manager, and come back.
Correct.
You could see fine.
Yes, sir.
And when you left to go to the manager, you didn't have any concern about your wife, correct? Obviously, you left her by herself.
That's correct.
All right. And there wasn't any issue with Chad Olson at the time that you left.
At that point, he was just being mouthy. He had presented no threat at all to me or anybody else.
The lighting conditions at that time were safe enough, so to speak, that you were able to, and you felt comfortable leaning forward and telling Chad to turn his cell phone off.
Yes, okay.
And at that point that you leaned over to Chad, there wasn't any safety concern at that point, correct?
I don't know what you mean from
The
him?
first time, when you leaned in, you didn't have any safety concern when you first leaned in to tell Chad to turn his phone off, correct?
You mean for me or?
For you.
No, sir, I didn't.
Okay. And the reason that you were leaning in was because you're saying that he had his cell phone on, right? And by on, just it was illuminated.
It was shining in my face, yes, sir.
Okay. So he was holding it out in front of him, and it was shining in your face, and that was bothering you.
Yes, sir.
Now, if you wanted to at that point, I guess you could have gone up and spoken to the manager at that point, correct?
It wasn't a big enough problem at that point.
Okay. But what I'm asking you is if you saw that, If you felt as though that you were in a vulnerable position, meaning, we heard from Dr. Cohen that maybe your perception of yourself would be that you felt vulnerable. If you wanted to at that point, you could have just gone right to the manager and not had any contact with Mr. Olson, right?
That wouldn't make sense. I would think that you just ask somebody and they would normally put it away.
Okay, but what I'm asking you is, you had the option, if you wanted to, you could have just got up at that point and gone to the manager.
I suppose, yes, sir.
Now, at this time in the theater on January 13th of 2014, you were 6'2", about 270 pounds,
Thereabouts, yes, sir.
and you had just returned from a week-long hunting trip, correct?
I think it was about 5 days.
And obviously, you were fine to sit in the car for a long trip to go up to North Florida.
We stopped for gas and so.
Okay, just
I don't-
normal things like that, correct?
Yeah, I don't recollect.
All right, and Matthew testified that when you would get out to go hunting, you'd walk 100 yards to go to the hunting spot, correct?
Thereabouts, yes, sir.
And during that particular trip, you climbed up 10 feet in the tree stand, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and that's where you had to bring the bow and arrow up, right? And you hunted from that particular spot, right?
correct.
All right, now you'd agree with me that someone that perceived themselves as vulnerable wouldn't climb up 10 feet into a tree and hunt, correct?
I think that I know what my capabilities are, and I felt comfortable doing that.
So you weren't concerned about you testified about all these issues that you found about, you weren't concerned about your shoulder or your back or these discs. I mean, it was fine enough for you. You felt comfortable enough at that point to go 10 feet up into a tree and hunt.
It's very easy to do, and you have a safety belt on. Not much can happen.
So on that particular day, you go to the theater and you drove, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, obviously you felt good enough to drive, you felt good enough to park a distance away from the front of the theater and walk to the theater, right?
We parked the closest parking spot that was not handicapped.
Okay, but still quite a distance away.
I don't recollect.
You went into the theater, you were waiting for your son, texting on your phone, correct?
Yes, sir, I did.
No difficulties doing that. Now, when you chose the seats that you were going to sit in, you chose the very back row, correct?
Yes, correct.
All right. And you chose the middle seats, correct?
It was close to the middle, yes, sir.
All right. And you didn't have any concern for your health or stability or things like that, knowing you had to walk all the way to the back, all the way over to the middle, correct?
I had a hand railing going up the stairs, and then I used the wall to go across the back, but no, I didn't have any concerns.
Okay. And you know you had to go across people, obviously, if you're sitting in the middle.
I don't think there was anybody there when we came in.
Well, right. But if you're sitting in the middle of a theater, you know at some point people are going to be on either side of you.
That's correct.
All right, so you sit down, Mr. Olson is in front of your wife, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. And he was always a row down and to your right, correct?
Yes, sir. He was one row down in
And
front
one
of my
seat
wife.
to the right.
Yeah,
Okay,
correct.
so during this entire event?
No, sir.
So was he off to the right of you?
His seat was off to the right of me, and when he jumped up, yes, sir.
All right, let's talk about exactly what happened. So you lean forward the first time and you tell him to turn his phone off, or you
Yeah.
asked him.
I asked him to turn his phone off.
Okay, and that's your testimony, is that you asked him to turn the phone off.
I asked him to turn his phone off.
All right. And That's when you leaned close up to his face, correct?
I was not close up to his face.
Okay. Well, the video would be the best way to determine that, correct?
That's correct.
And at this time, you had a loaded firearm in your right pocket, correct?
That's correct.
And you indicate that at the time that you leaned forward, Mr. Olson cursed back at you.
Yes, sir.
So at this point in time, based on your testimony, you know at that moment that this is someone that you probably shouldn't re-engage with.
That's why I went to the manager.
Okay. Now, even though, according to you, Chad Olson cursed at you and told you that he didn't want to have any contact with you, despite that,
he did not tell me that he did not want to have contact with me.
okay, well, basically, you're indicating that his statement was one that let you know he did not want to have contact with you.
It let me know that he had no intentions of putting his phone away.
Okay, but I think your quote was, he said, what, get the F out of his face?
And F off.
Okay, so are you telling this jury that if someone says that to you, that's not their way of saying that they don't want to have any contact with you?
I think it's up for interpretation. It was not expected, and it didn't sound particularly violent. It just sounds like somebody mouthing off.
Okay, well, the way that you made it sound was that it was something that was fairly violent because that's what raised your concern level.
I was not concerned at that point.
Okay, so are you saying that when someone says to you, I'm going to say it just for fact, when someone says, get the fuck out of my face, you don't take that as a way of someone saying, leave me alone?
When they're, I suppose that you could reach that conclusion. My conclusion was it was just a guy being mouthy.
Okay, but he actually told you to get out of his face.
First of all, I wasn't in his face, and he was facing the other direction.
Okay, but it doesn't matter which way he was facing. He basically told you to get out of his face. He's telling you he doesn't want to have any contact with you.
And I didn't.
Again, you quite sincerely did.
Now, you then get up and you go to the manager, correct?
No, sir.
Okay, because what happens is you first lean in and you tell him to turn his phone off, and that's when he replies to you.
I asked him to turn his phone off. I did
Okay.
not tell him to turn his phone off.
And he responds the way that he did, that we just discussed.
Correct.
All right. So then you waited another 30 seconds, right?
To see if he had put his phone away. Yes,
Okay.
sir.
And even though he had said to you, get the F out of my face, instead of getting up and just going to the manager, you decided to lean forward and engage him again.
I told him he left me no alternative than to go to the management.
That's right. But you did not have to lean forward and say that to him. You could have, as a form of de-escalation, gotten up and just gone out and got the manager at that point.
I think the whole contact that I had with him was an attempt at de-escalation.
Okay. He originally tells you to get the F out of his face. There's nothing that prevented you at that point in time to just go to the manager.
I think we've agreed to that.
Okay, but instead of just getting up and going to the manager, you took it upon yourself to lean in again and reinitiate contact with him.
Yes, sir. I think we've had that. We talked about that.
Now, at this point in time, you could have moved, correct? I'm not saying you were under an obligation to do so, but if you wanted to de-escalate it, and if you felt as though you were a vulnerable person, you could have moved like your wife wanted to.
Correct.
And your wife actually mentioned it to you, but you decided that you weren't going to move.
Yes.
And you heard your wife when she said that, correct?
Believe so, yes, sir.
Do you need to refresh your memory on anything?
No, sir.
All right, so you did hear your wife and you told her that you weren't moving.
I didn't tell her anything.
So now you go to the manager, and at this point, you've already had 2 contacts with Mr. Olson, right?
Correct.
You get up, you have to walk past 2 sets of people. You have to walk past Jane, Roy, and you have to walk past the Turners, right?
Correct.
Okay. Obviously, you didn't know their names then, but there was 2 sets of people you had to walk by.
Yes, that's correct.
Now, when you're at the manager's desk, you tell the manager, I think your testimony was, he, meaning Mr. Olson, doesn't seem to have the right attitude for me to try and talk to him again. You recall that?
I don't know if those were the exact words, but I indicated, I apologized to him first off that I had to come down there on a grown man. And then I told him that I had tried to get a gentleman that was sitting in front of me to turn his phone off, and he had used profanity, and I didn't think it would be appropriate for me to try to talk to him again.
And so did you tell the manager that the guy's got an attitude and that he told you to F off?
I did.
Okay. Now, you speak to the manager. Let me ask you this. You very well could have waited for the manager to go back into the theater with you.
He didn't offer to go back in the theater with me.
Okay, but you could have waited though, right? You had a conversation with him. You could have said, "Hey, I'd like you to come back, and I'm going to wait for you." There's nothing that prevented you from saying that.
The manager told me I could return to my seat.
Now, if you felt as though there was, that there was an issue with Mr. Olson, obviously you would have waited.
At that point, there was no issue with Mr. Olson.
So when you come back into the theater, now at this point, you reinitiate a 3rd time with Mr. Olson. So we have the first time that you lean forward to talk about the cell phone. The 2nd time is when you lean forward, tell him that you're going to the manager. Now we have a 3rd time where you're leaning forward to basically tell him that you told on him.
When I came back in, he was looking in my direction. I believe I said he was staring.
Okay, well,
And he was,
go on. Go on.
and he was speaking out loud. I don't know if he was speaking to his wife, or I think he was trying to, in my opinion, he was very loudly trying to proclaim that he was concerned about something.
Okay, let me ask you this. So you're saying now that he was staring at you?
Yes.
Okay, and obviously that was something that was important to you.
It caught my eye. It wasn't important.
Okay, well, didn't you testify that the reason that you said something to him when you came back from the manager was because he was staring at you? That was your way of de-escalating it.
What I said was that he was talking out loud. I heard something about the theater and the manager,
Okay,
and that's.
I don't think you're. I want to make sure you understand. Well, he's not answering my question.
Sustain, give him a chance.
What I'm asking you is this. When you came back from the manager, you reinitiated with Chad Olson, the person who already told you to get the F out of his face, the person who had already told you that he didn't want to have any contact with you. With your background training experience in de-escalation, you go to the manager, you come back. You reinitiate another time, a 3rd time with Chad Olson, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And the reason that you did that, I think you testified during direct, was because he was staring at you, or he was looking in your direction.
And he was talking out loud, speaking to the theater or to his wife, and he was commenting on that I had been to the manager.
Okay.
I didn't get all the words.
Did you tell Detective
I'm going to object again.
Well, I'm just asking about staring.
One at a time, that goes for everyone. Let him finish. Sustain.
Did you tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you came back from the manager?
I don't recollect, sir.
Okay. Would it refresh your memory to take a look at your post-Miranda statement?
Sure.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm going to give you both statements so that you can review both of them. After you finish reading them, let me know.
Do you want me to review the whole thing?
If you can review as much as you want to refresh your memory as to whether or not you told Detective Proctor.
Can we have a page in a line?
There is no page and there is no line.
Well, there is a page, but you have to give us some kind of line. If not, we're gonna be here for 30 minutes just to read the whole thing.
Okay, I can rephrase it. Would it surprise you to learn that nowhere in your post-Miranda statement did you ever tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you returned back from the movie theater? I'm sorry, from the manager.
Probably not, no, sir.
Okay, so what I'm asking you is this. You never told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you when you came back from seeing the manager?
I don't think so, no, sir. But I'm not sure.
Okay, well, that's why I want you to refresh your memory with your statement. Look in there, and if at any time you see that Chad Olson said, or that you told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was staring at you, to let me know. I don't want you to guess about anything. Take your time and read through your statement.
You want me to read this whole thing?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have some idea where this might be, sir, so I don't have to read the whole thing?
I'm sorry?
Do you have some idea where this might be?
It's not in there.
Then, okay, then I'll agree with you. I didn't.
Okay. I mean, I didn't want you to take my word for it.
I will.
Okay. So, what you told Detective Proctor was that you had a contact with Chad to tell him to turn the phone off. Then you told him you were going to the manager. You come back from the manager, and with all your de-escalation tactics that you're aware of, you reinitiate Chad Olson another time.
To de-escalate, yes, sir.
Now, you say to de-escalate,
Yes, sir.
but in your tape statement, Detective Proctor, you indicate that you are the one that reinitiates the conversation with Chad Olson. Isn't that correct?
Because he was talking about me going to the manager.
If you can look at the post-Miranda statement that's in front of you, I'm directing you to page 6. Lines 19 through 22. Tell me when you're finished reading that to yourself.
I finished.
Okay, so when you came back from the manager, you went over and you saw that Mr. Olson had put his phone away, and when you went by, I said, I see you put the phone away. I told the manager for no reason. In other words, I went in and ratted you out.
Well, I mean, that I went in and ratted you out was my comment, not what I said to him. He's the one that he wasn't talking to me, he was talking to someone else. I guess I was responding to what he said. I was trying to de-escalate because it seems like with the stare and the other stuff that he was still concerned.
In your statement to Detective Proctor, the one that you just read, you did not tell Detective Proctor that you overheard Mr. Olson or that Mr. Olson in any way said anything to you. You said that when you came back from the manager, you were the one that reinitiated, correct? That's what's in the post-Miranda statement.
Okay, yes, sir.
Okay, I don't want you to just agree with me. I want you to look at it.
I did.
Okay, so when you told Detective Proctor, or when you spoke to Detective Proctor, you told him you reinitiated with Chad.
I told him, when I talked with him on the phone, I can quote it if you like.
No, it says, I came back into the movie, the guy put his phone away, I went by, I said, I see you put it away. I told the manager for no reason. Correct? That's what it says.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it doesn't say anywhere that you heard Chad saying something and that you were trying to de-escalate. It doesn't say that anywhere in the statement.
Okay.
So going back to my original question, this is the third time then that you yourself reinitiated with Chad Olson.
That would be the indication, based upon what I heard him saying.
Okay, but again, and I'm going to move on, you never told Detective Proctor that you heard him say anything.
Correct.
And obviously, you didn't perceive yourself as a vulnerable person because this is the third time that you have initiated a contact with Mr. Olson.
I don't think it had anything to do with being vulnerable.
I agree with you. Now, when you had come back, Chad had turned his cell phone off, right?
I have no idea.
Okay, well, if you look in the same exact spot that I was just referring to refresh your memory, it was at page 6, lines 19 through 22. Okay, when you had come back, Chad Olson had turned off his cell phone, correct?
It says here that the guy had put his phone away.
Okay, so he had put his phone away.
I have no idea if it was off or on. I didn't see it.
Okay, but you put it away. All right, so he did exactly what you wanted him to.
I suppose, yes, sir.
So at this point, everything was fine.
As far as I was concerned, yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you were wearing sneakers that had reflective material on it on that particular day, correct?
Yes, sir.
May I press the button?
You may.
I'm showing you what's been admitted into evidence as State's Exhibit number 50. These are the sneakers that you're wearing on that day?
It appears to be, yes, sir.
Okay. And on the sides or on the back is where the reflective material is?
I think on the outside, I can't really tell, but whatever the gray area is, I think
Okay.
it reflects.
So in the back, you see the gray area?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so wherever it's gray, as you indicated, that's the reflective material.
I don't know if it's all reflective or not.
Okay, well, you know that your shoes reflected light on that day, correct?
Only because the sheriff's office took a bunch of pictures.
May I have the witness step down and use the TV?
Yes.
May I reposition myself?
You may.
in states that there's, what? Is this number 2? I'm referring to State's Exhibit number 2 for these questions, for the record. You see yourself standing up over here?
Yes.
Okay. And when you stand up and you start to walk, everybody see? You can see a reflection on the bottom of your shoe, correct? See that right there?
Looks like it's on the outside of the right foot, yes.
Okay. Okay. You see yourself sitting right here in the back row?
I think, yes, sir, I think I see my wife and
Okay. And this is you with the popcorn in the back row?
I think so.
Okay. Now, when you sat down, you took your right leg and you crossed it over your left leg, correct?
That looks like it's in front of my wife's face, sir. And I don't know if I crossed my leg or not, sir.
Okay. But what you can see here is you crossing your right leg and your shoe reflecting from the light, correct?
I don't know, sir. That's an odd angle. I can't tell that.
Okay. Well, the light is moving with the leg, correct? Well, I'm asking you.
I don't, sir. The popcorn bag was probably, I don't know. And as far as I know, the expert's going to be.
Okay. Well, I'm just asking you if that's your leg moving.
It appears to be, yes.
Okay. Now, you're coming back from the manager at this point. I'll play a little bit more. You're coming back, and you're sitting back down. You grab the popcorn, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's you.
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you look on the bottom left-hand corner, you can see another reflection down here, correct?
Yes, sir, I think so.
Okay. And it's moving at the same time that your leg is moving, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Much like when you were moving your leg and you put your right leg over your left leg before, we see the same movement with the reflection, correct?
I don't know that I put my right leg over my left leg, but it looks like the outside of the shoe, yes, sir, I think.
Okay.
It looks like it's maybe the side or something.
This is when you come back from the manager. Now, obviously, we just watched, that was you that sat down, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you sat down, in this particular frames, you once again put your right leg over your left leg, correct?
I don't recollect that. I don't recollect crossing my legs.
Okay. Is it a possibility?
I suppose it is, or the popcorn bag, or I don't know. Well, right there, you see Mr. Olson throwing something. That would be a pretty good indicator to me.
Okay. Did I ask you a question about that just now?
You asked me what I saw in the video.
No, I was asking you about the reflection on your shoe. We're going to get to the whole event. Okay, don't worry about that. I'm just asking you about the reflection on the shoe.
I have no idea.
Now, there's been a suggestion that at some point in time, you were hit maybe with a cell phone or a fist at this point in time, correct?
I don't think it was a suggestion, it was a reality.
Okay, and we'll talk about that. But in looking at this series of events, you had come back from the manager, you're sitting down in a seat, and when you sit down, you crossed your right leg, and that's the reflection that we see. Would you agree with me that when you're moving forward, the reflection is your right leg going down?
At the same time, Mr. Olson is entering the frame, and I don't know, sir.
Okay, well, what I'm asking you this, you've seen the previous frames where every single time you're moving, we see that light source moving. Now here we are in this series of frames, and the light source is once again moving when you're moving your right leg. Isn't that correct?
I see it on the bottom of my shoes, yes, sir.
Okay. So what we see here is your leg crossing and uncrossing, and that's exactly what the white light is.
I don't see, I see my leg crossing, I don't see them. The light is at the same time Mr. Olson is coming across.
Okay. Well, Mr. Olson wasn't in the last series of clips that I showed you when the light source was moving with your phone, was he?
Those were pretty apparent.
Okay. Well, looking at this one, you don't see your right leg moving?
I see my right leg coming up, yes, sir.
Okay, and you see at the same time that your right leg's moving, you see that light being
I see it on
reflected?
the floor, yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if I cross my leg, but I see it on the floor, just like I did in the other view. It's on the floor.
Okay. Now let's take a look at this one. Now look at the bottom right-hand corner, okay? So this is where I'm going to be directing your attention.
I see.
Okay, right over here. Do you see that light reflecting?
Down below my wife?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, sir, I do.
Okay, you see it? Now, is it a coincidence that your right leg is once again moving at the time that we see that light?
I'm getting away from him, and
I'm not asking you what way you're moving. I'm just asking you about the reflection of your shoe when you're moving your leg. In other words, every single time that you're moving, in all the clips that we've seen, that's when you see the reflection.
that looks like it's on the right-hand side of my wife.
Okay? But aren't you moving at the same time?
So is my wife.
Are you suggesting to the court that that's your wife's shoe?
I'm suggesting to the court that that's my wife moving next to me.
Okay, I'm not asking you if your wife's moving next to you. I'm asking you about the reflection when you're moving, consistent with all the other times there's a reflection when you're moving.
There is a reflection below my wife, or looks like to the right of my wife, and I'm moving and she's moving.
And in fact, talking about your wife, she's facing Mr. Olson at that time, correct? But as soon as the shot's fired, she looks to the left.
I can't tell head direction there.
And you can't tell that she's looking straight here and then looking right at the shooting.
That's right.
You can't tell that?
I can see the top of it.
Okay. And you can also obviously see the reflection down here.
I see a spot down there by my wife, yes.
Okay. The fact of the matter is, based on what we demonstrated, at no time was a cell phone thrown at your face at the time that you had come back from the manager. That's simply the reflection of your shoe.
I think there's nobody that can answer that but me, and I got hit in the face.
I'm going to be using this in a little bit to go through what happened if you wouldn't mind returning.
Is that showing on my screen too? Okay, then I'll send it on the screen.
Now, I believe you indicated on direct examination that you had said, and correct me if I'm wrong, you had said to Chad that you were sorry for telling on him.
Something similar to that.
Well, what's similar? Did you say I apologize? Did you say I'm sorry?
When I got back from the manager's office.
Correct.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know exactly what I said.
Okay, well,
It was
you didn't-
it was an effort to diffuse any situation that might be there.
when you spoke to Detective Proctor, you never told Detective Proctor that you apologized to Chad in order to try to de-escalate the situation, did you?
I don't know that I called it an apology, no, sir.
Okay, well, let's not play word games because it's really important. And I don't mean to be sarcastic. Okay.
Oh,
Did you
let's
say,
move on.
did you say, I'm sorry, I apologize, or any word whatsoever that would give an indication that you were sorry or apologizing? When you spoke to Detective Proctor?
I don't, when I spoke to Detective Proctor, I told him that I did speak to him when I came back.
Okay, but you didn't specifically tell Detective Proctor that you apologized to Mr. Olson, you said you're sorry to Mr. Olson, any words of that effect? That's the question that I'm asking you.
I don't think so. I think I told him that I don't know that I formed it as an apology, but
Okay, but you didn't say anything at all like that?
I don't think so. To Detective Proctor, right?
Correct. All right, so let me ask you this. How many times are you saying that Mr. Olson attacked you? Twice?
I think we were, at the time, he either hit me in the face, and I suspect very, very, very strongly, rather than a fist, it was a phone. And then you saw him grab the popcorn. I was not aware of the popcorn, but I was aware that he was trying to grab a hold of me.
Okay, so
And then he pitched it back. I'm not sure I saw that, but I did see him coming over the seat with his fist
okay.
at the instant he got shot.
Okay, we're going to talk about all of that, okay? I'm asking you how many attacks there were. So based on your answer just now, you are saying that there were 2 separate times that you were attacked by Mr. Olson.
Correct.
All right. And the very first time was when you came back from the manager, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's the time that you're saying that it was a fist or a phone, correct?
Right.
And you're saying that you strongly believe it was a phone.
Very strongly.
Okay, so you must be saying that by getting hit with this phone, it must have been so hard that you actually realized that Mr. Olson is a danger to you. In other words, if he tossed the phone at you or dropped the phone towards you, it wouldn't be a big deal.
He hit me in the face. I saw him as a threat at that point, and I tried to get out of his way.
Okay, so he hit you in the face. Your testimony is with a cell phone.
Yes.
Okay. Now, isn't it true that you told Detective Proctor that you weren't sure it was a cell phone, and in fact, you only put 2 and 2 together, so to speak, when you looked down and saw a cell phone?
That's pretty much accurate, yes, sir.
Okay, so today you're testifying, I'm fairly certain it was a cell phone, but the day of the shooting, you told Detective Proctor, I don't know what it was. I looked down, there's a cell phone. Must have been a cell phone, right?
At the time I interviewed with Detective Proctor, I had not seen the video.
Well, why would you have to see the video? You lived it.
My impression at the time that I was hit was that he was perhaps too far away for a fist. When I saw the phone, I put 2 and 2 together. He hit me in the face with his phone.
Okay. So a minute ago you said you hadn't seen the video. So you're not telling us that you're tailoring your testimony to what you witnessed in the video, are you?
I think the video is supporting my position.
Okay. Even though it's been shown that the reflection was clearly your shoe?
I don't think at every instance it's been shown that way.
Okay. So you're indicating that there were 2 separate times. Okay, so let's talk about only your post-Miranda statement with Detective Proctor. Then we're going to talk about this additional attack. Let's talk only about your statement to Detective Proctor, okay? All right. To Detective Proctor, you indicated that you had come back from the manager. You already need you to refresh your memory?
No, I'm sorry. Yes, sir, I had come back from the manager.
Okay. So you indicated to Detective Proctor that you had come back from the manager and you had reinitiated with Mr. Olson, even though he had put the phone away, correct?
I think, yes, sir, that was pretty much it.
Okay. And obviously you could have just gone and sat in your seat and not had any conversation at all with Mr. Olson.
Except that I heard him complaining about the manager.
Okay. And we've already established that's not in this post-Miranda statement.
That's correct.
All right. So assuming that that didn't happen, just for the sake of my question, because it's not in the post-Miranda
I'm
statement.
going to object, Your Honor. I can't assume that it didn't happen. He's testifying just the opposite. That calls for speculation at this point.
All sustained.
So you come back from the manager and you sit down. Now, the words that you use to Detective Proctor are as follows. Chad turns around in his seat. You recall that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And the word in means he is in his seat and he turns around. Correct?
In my statement, I believe I was interrupted by a deputy who brought me a drink, and when he turned in his seat, he stood up.
Okay. If you need to, refresh your memory with the post-Miranda statement transcript.
I did.
Okay? All right. In there, you told Detective Proctor, when I came back, Chad turned around in his seat.
Yes, sir.
And then you discussed something that we're going to get to in a second that happened right after that, correct?
The deputy handed me a drink that had a pile of ice on top of it. It kind of interrupted the conversation.
Okay. Really, this is what I'm asking you. You said that Chad turned around in his seat. Forget about when the deputy interrupting you after the fact doesn't mean anything. Your language,
Judge,
your
I'm gonna
word.
object, move to strike. It does mean something. For him to be testifying what it means and what it doesn't mean is from the witness stand that means something.
Let's rephrase.
Prior to being interrupted, you used the words, Chad Olson turned around in his seat.
Correct. And stood up. Not on the deposition.
Your Honor, I haven't asked the witness a question. All right, I'm going to direct your attention to page 6, lines 26 through 37. Read them to yourselves and let me know when you're finished, please.
Through 37.
Page 6, lines 26 through 37. Just read them to yourself and tell me when you're ready. And if you think you need more context, you can go up to line 19. So it'll be 19 through 37.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so when you read that, going in chronological order, because I would assume you're explaining it in chronological order.
No, well, no, sir, I wasn't, but I understand.
Okay. So when a detective is asking you to explain what had happened in a shooting where someone died, and with your background, training, and experience, you're saying that you weren't explaining it in chronological order.
I think if you read the whole thing, I was probably in shock for what had just happened, and there's a lot of things that are injected at different places.
Okay. All right. So let's read through this. So
Okay.
starting at line 19, you indicate that you had gone back into the movie. I came back to the movie. The guy had put his phone away. When I went by, I said, "I see you put it away." I told the manager for no reason. In other words, I went and ratted him out. If he was going to put it away, I would have gone and And Detective Proctor says, "Right," and you say, "Makes sense." And he turns around in his seat, and then you talk about a drink.
Right.
Okay. Then you said, and
I'm going to
he.
object. It's either impeachment or it's not impeachment. Improper predicate for whatever he's doing.
Your Honor, the witness wanted to be placed in the context, and this can only be placed in context by reading this.
Well, there's got to be a question,
Okay.
and he's got to have the opportunity to answer. So ask the question and let him answer.
Okay, so we already discussed the exact wording. He turned around in his seat. After that, and I'm specifically speaking on page 6, line 36, you indicate, or starting on 35, when I had come back, that's when he had said that. His wife is holding him back, so I had sat down. I think I got the bag of popcorn from my wife, and so he jumps up and turns around.
Yes, sir.
Okay? So you had originally indicated that he turns around in his seat, and after he had turned around in his seat, you indicated he had jumped up. There'd be no reason for him to jump up if he turned around in his seat, correct?
I would say that probably he turned around and jumped up all at the same time. It was one motion.
Okay. But what you stated in this statement was, when I returned from the manager, we came back. He says, if it was any of your effing business, I was texting my daughter, stay the hell out of my face. I think that's when he said that. His wife was holding him back, so I had sat down. I got the bag of popcorn. He jumps up and turns around. Now, let me ask you this. May I briefly have the witness step down again?
You may.
Publish 2 pictures in front of the jury. I'm going to be referring to Defense Exhibit 9, it's like 9-1 and 7-3.
What, were they admitted?
Yes, Your Honor.
That's not what they should admit. Is it 9, composite? Yes, Judge.
No, is it 9?
Okay, all right. So
Yes.
it's composite 9,
Course,
and
course,
those are
okay.
the individual pictures.
I'm going to have Mr. Reeves stand next to me.
Okay.
Looking at, first we'll look at them together, and then we're going to jump to them. Looking at 7-3, the timestamp on the bottom is 13/26/25, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, 322, okay. So this happened closer in time than this one, because this is 13/26/36.266, correct?
This one's first.
This one was first, because it's this 25 here.
Oh, I got it, okay.
Okay, and 36 here.
I see.
Okay, so this one happened first.
Okay.
All right. Now, looking at this is when you're saying that a cell phone hit you. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it appears to be. Yes.
Okay, that's what you're,
That's because I could see Mr. Olson's arm all the way across the back of his seat, or back behind his seat. Yes.
correct, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now.
Okay.
Okay, so would you agree with me? And we'll turn and show, I'm going to show you first, and then we're going to show the jury. Let me ask it this way: was he standing at this point in time?
It happened so quickly, I'm not sure. I think he was. He was either in the process of standing, or whether he turned and stood or stood and turned. I'm guessing he jumped out of his seat and flipped around.
Okay, so I'm just trying to make it clear. Was he standing or he wasn't standing?
I don't know. At the time,
Just give me just 1 second. I'm going to show you, this is page 1850, lines 10 through 14.
I can't hear you. Listen.
You want him to read it to himself?
Yeah, just read it to yourself. 10 through 15, to see if that refreshes your memory about when you returned from the manager, if you indicated that he was standing up.
it sounds like he was jumping up and turning around like this.
Okay, so what I'm asking you is this. When you look at Defense Exhibit 7-3, and then you look at Defense Exhibit 9-1, In 7-3, he's not in the same position as 9-1. In 9-1, he's standing. In 7-3, it's consistent with your statement to Detective Proctor that he turned around in his seat. Do you see a difference between...
Ask me the
You-
question one more time.
You gotta talk louder.
Okay, try it one more time.
Okay. You were indicating that Mr. Olson was standing up when he struck you. Looking at Defense Exhibit 7-3, which is the top one,
Right,
and looking at Defense Exhibit 9-1, which is the bottom one,
right.
you'd agree with me that they're in two different positions.
Yes, yes, both of them.
Okay. And that in 7-3, he is turned around in his seat, meaning sitting down, which is consistent with your original statement to Detective Proctor.
The location of the camera, the angle that the camera is coming at, gives you a misperception of where he's at, and because he's right on the very edge of the frame.
Okay?
And he moves over from the center of his seat or from wherever he jumped up, almost to his right. So
Okay,
it's
but-
misleading.
Okay, but it's the same camera.
Yeah.
Okay, it's the same angle. So in this one, he appears to be sitting, and the very same camera shows you he appears to be standing.
That means he's just standing in two different places. That's in his seat and in front of his wife.
May I publish these to the jury?
Yeah. Can Mr. Reeves sit down again?
Yes.
Do we have people arriving for a 1:30 calendar? Is that what the deal is?
Yes, Your Honor.
Can we put a sign out there?
There's 3 signs out there already.
That was a Tampa lawyer.
I know, I saw. Nothing's going on here.
Our apologies for Tampa.
we're going to keep going with your statement that was given the day of the shooting to Detective Proctor. We're going to go in order, okay?
Okay.
So, you come back from the manager, we're not going to have a discussion about turns around in the seat anymore. After that, you indicate that Mr. Olson jumps up, correct?
At the same time, we're talking about, I don't know, we're looking at the videos that are in milliseconds. So I think in real life, we're talking about milliseconds between standing and jumping up. Yes, sir.
Okay, so my question to you was, after you said that he had turned around in his seat, he had now jumped up, so that's the point that we're at.
He's on his feet, yes, sir.
Okay.
And he's turned around and he's facing me.
Okay, and you indicated to Detective Proctor that the moment he jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside almost immediately.
I didn't know what happened to the popcorn.
Okay, didn't you tell Detective Proctor that immediately when he jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside? Whether he took it from you, or you yourself dropped it, or it accidentally fell, it doesn't matter for the purposes of my question. My question to you is this. After you said that Chad Olson jumped up, you said that the popcorn went by the wayside immediately. Do you remember saying that to Detective Proctor?
I believe I do, yes, sir.
I didn't hear your answer.
Yes.
Okay, so according to you, immediately upon Chad Olson jumping up, the popcorn fell. Let's talk about what you said to Detective Proctor after the popcorn fell. After the popcorn fell, you told Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was virtually on top of you.
Correct.
So after the popcorn fell, he was virtually on top of you. Now, virtually on top of you would mean that he was basically in your row, virtually on top of you, correct? That's what you meant when you told Detective Proctor.
What I meant by that was that I was seated, he was standing over me, he was a giant. I have no idea if he was on his seat, I don't know. He was leaning over the back of his seat, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Now, when you say leaning over the back of the seat, wouldn't you agree with me that's a lot different than someone that's virtually on top of you?
That would be my interpretation of somebody who's attacking me, yes, sir.
Okay. You've been in law enforcement for a long time, right?
27 years ago now, almost 30 years.
Okay. You written police reports in the past?
30 years ago.
Okay. So how many reports do you think you've written? Thousands and thousands and thousands of reports?
I have no idea.
Okay. I mean, what I'm saying, though, is you haven't written 3 or 4.
No.
Okay.
Right.
And in fact, as a supervisor, you probably reviewed reports of officers that were under your command, correct?
Correct.
And when you're reviewing reports, you're making sure that the reports are very accurate, very detailed, because you know that both the state attorney's office and defense attorneys are going to be looking at those reports to find out truthful and accurate information. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. You're reviewing it for content.
Okay.
Because you weren't at the scene, you don't know how accurate it is.
Okay, but you're reviewing it to make sure there's sufficient information and it's detailed because you know how important it is.
Correct.
Okay, and when you authored your own reports, you certainly wanted to make sure that the words you choose were extremely critical and that the words you choose were very accurate, correct?
35 years ago, yes.
Okay, so you're saying now you don't think it's important to be accurate with your words?
I use different words now.
Okay, I'm not asking you what words you use. I'm talking about the actual words that you use. It doesn't matter what the words are. It's that you're accurate whenever you speak. In other words, here you are describing an event where you believe, and we'll get to it, that you're in a life and death struggle, right? Correct. Wouldn't you agree with me that the words that you choose, the content, is so incredibly important?
I would think that the content, if it relays the feeling at the time, I'm not sure. Everything is important in this kind of an investigation.
Okay, so here's what I'm getting at. Today you're saying leaning over. Back on the day that this event happened, you tell Detective Proctor he's virtually on top of you.
That would be similar, yes, sir. They would mean essentially the same.
Really?
Yes.
Leaning over and actually on top of you to the point where you think you have to kill someone is the same thing.
I think you're trying to make it sound like he's physically on top of me.
Okay.
He was attacking me. He was very large. He was trying to come across his back seat. That would be my analogy of virtually on top of me. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you indicate that while Chad Olson is virtually on top of you, your left hand is out and you're yelling, no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa.
I am trying to dissuade him from coming across, and my thought is, yes, that my hand is in front of me.
Okay, and when you read all these sentences that we're breaking up together, this is the picture. Chad Olson is virtually on top of me, so I have my left hand out. Now,
No, I said it was in front of me, I'm sorry.
okay, well, let's just keep going through the statement. After that, isn't it true that you say, I'm holding on, I'm touching something, it's his chest, or it's his arm?
I wasn't sure that in retrospect, I think that's when he grabbed the popcorn, he hit my hand.
Okay, we're not talking about in retrospect. At the time that you gave the statement
No,
to Detective Proctor, at the time, closest in time to the event of when you shot and killed Chad Olson, didn't you tell Detective Proctor that Chad Olson was virtually on top of you? You
Yes.
have your left hand out. He's virtually in your lap, and you're touching his chest and his shoulder area to give the impression that he is on top of you, and that's why you're going whoa, 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 and no, no, no.
That's correct.
And at that time, and again, this is all after the popcorn fell.
Again, popcorn, I had no idea where it was.
Okay, I'm not asking you if you knew where it was. Based on your statement, you said when he jumped up, the popcorn fell immediately. All of this that we're talking
I
about is
didn't
after
say
the
it.
popcorn fell, according
Okay.
to you, Detective Proctor.
Okay.
The post-mortem statement that you have in front of you, page 7. To put this in chronological context, you can look at page 6, just the very bottom. On page 6 at the very bottom, that's where we talked about that Mr. Olson had jumped up. Is that correct? Are you on page 7 now?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, so at the bottom of page 6, it discussed where you said that Mr. Olson had jumped up, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now we're on page 7, so we're just
Okay.
going chronologically.
Okay.
If you look at lines 11, 12, and 13, it's at that point that you indicate Mr. Olson had jumped up, and now he's virtually on top of you, correct?
Judge, I'm going to object and ask on the doctrine of completeness for him to read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and to go all the way to that, under the doctrine of completeness.
I'll read the entire thing.
Okay, it's his thing.
We're just going to read through page 7. He's pushing back. There's a crack between us. I'm leaning back in my chair. I got nowhere to go. And if just follow along, so if at any time I say anything incorrect, let me know.
You're on line what, sir?
And then now I'm on line 8, page 7.
Okay.
This is you.
All right.
I'm leaning back in my chair. He kept on hollering. I'm not sure what was said, to be honest with you. He said something that led me to believe he was going to kick my ass. I don't know if that's exactly how he phrased it or not, so I'm looking briefly, and I can't go anywhere. Now, here's the part that we were discussing. I'm leaning all the way back in my chair to get away from him. Suddenly, he's virtually on top of me. So we went from Mr. Olson jumping up, then what we just talked about, and he's virtually on top of you, right?
He only jumped up once and turned around. Yes, sir.
Okay, but we're still talking about after the popcorn drop.
I don't know when the popcorn left. I'm sorry.
Okay. We had already established that you said that as soon as Chad Olson jumped up, the popcorn went by the wayside immediately, right?
But I don't know at what point.
Okay, immediately.
Okay.
Okay, I mean, immediately is the point. When Mr. Olson jumped up, the popcorn went to the wayside immediately. That means right then, correct?
Okay.
Your Honor, I'm going to object again. That is not in a chronological base on the transcript.
Your Honor,
There is nothing that
Overruled.
So you indicate that you're going backwards, correct?
I'm going backwards because he's coming at me, yes, sir.
Right, okay. And you indicate that he's virtually on top of you, your left arm is out in front of you. You can read, this is lines 18 through 25. And you're saying no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. So while you're back and he's virtually on top of you, your left hand's out. You're yelling no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. And at that time, that's the time that you're saying you were struck in the head.
No, I was struck in the head as soon as he turned around.
Okay.
Instantly. I mean, there was nothing that preceded that.
Okay. Read lines 18 through 21. I'll read it to you. And you're sitting down, and there ain't no way to get out. So I'm stretched out trying to get away. My left arm is out in front of me. I'm either saying no, 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 or whoa, whoa, whoa. Suddenly, my head was to the right, so he hit me with something. I assume it was his fist. With his fist or something. I think he had his cell phone in his hand. I saw the blur of the screen.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's my point, Your Honor. That is the correct one. He is trying to impeach him on something.
Your Honor, I would object to the speaking objection.
Sustained, I mean, overruled on yours and sustained as the speaking objections. You can approach, but you don't need to right now.
The picture that you have painted for Detective Proctor, and again, this statement is in evidence, the members of the jury can listen to themselves, okay? You indicate that when he jumped, the popcorn went by the wayside immediately. After that, you're explaining that Chad Olson is virtually on top of you. You're leaning back, you have your hand out yelling, whoa, whoa, whoa. And it's at that time you're struck. That's what this statement says, correct?
Let me think about the time frame here for a minute. The first time I was hit was preceding anything else. This time this is what I mentioned earlier about jumping around. I know what this says, but I also know when I was hit. I don't have an explanation.
Okay, so you don't have an explanation as to why a statement to Detective Proctor on the day of the shooting is so different than today.
I think that I was excited. I was scared. I think that once you have adrenaline going in your system, I may have confused one item with another. This happened over a period of seconds. I mean, virtually seconds, and in my mind, much quicker than that.
Okay. Would you agree with me that the powers of observation fade over time?
I would agree that, yes, that would normally be the case.
Okay. In fact, the phrase that I just used, the powers of observation would fade over time, is the phrase you yourself used in this statement with Detective Proctor.
Okay.
Would you agree with me?
I would agree with that. That's factual.
So, we're 8 years past the time of the shooting, correct?
Yes, correct.
And if the powers of observation fade over time, it's kind of interesting that today you have added a quote-unquote second attack. Now the reason, and I'm asking you this, wouldn't be the reason that you added a second attack is you're trying to justify this shooting by making an attack appear to have occurred 8 seconds prior, when in your statement to Detective Proctor, it occurred after the popcorn had fallen on the ground.
I never put the two together. He only hit me one time, and then he was reaching for me the other times, just like when he was shot. He was reaching for me.
I understand, and the jurors have the post-Miranda statement, and they listen to your testimony.
Right.
Okay? And the stories on your post-Miranda statement and today are very different.
We're dealing in microseconds today, and I was dealing with stress then.
Okay, well, 8 seconds isn't microseconds.
I don't know anything about 8 seconds.
We'll get there in a little bit.
Okay.
Now, you indicated that while your left hand was out, because Mr. Olson's virtually on top of you, you believe you were touching his shoulders or his chest because he was virtually in your lap. Do you remember saying he was virtually in your lap?
I do.
Okay, and that's why you're touching him, because the picture you're painting for Detective Proctor is he's on top of you. And you indicated in your statement to Detective Proctor that you were surprised you didn't shoot your own left hand, correct?
I was, yes,
Okay,
sir.
that's because it was out in front of the gun, correct?
That was my perception, yes, sir.
Okay, now you'd agree with me that had your hand truly, really been in front of the gun, there'd be stippling all over your left hand.
The gun was in a I think you guys call it index shooting position. It would have been very close to my body. It would not have been extended. It would be pretty close to my right hip.
Okay, you're the one that said you're surprised you didn't shoot your left hand, right?
Yes, sir.
I didn't make that up. You said yourself you're surprised you didn't shoot your left hand,
That's correct.
okay? Because the gun was in a position where the bullet would come out and shoot your hand. So your hand had to actually be in front of the muzzle. That's the only way you could be afraid you'd shoot yourself.
Your illustration of having your hand straight out in front of you is not what my thought was. My thought was it was down by my hip, and my gun was down by my hip. So all this sticking your hand straight out in front of you had never crossed my mind.
Okay, but in your statement, you're saying that you have your left arm out and you're surprised that you didn't shoot yourself.
Okay.
I mean, there's no way around that.
Perceptual distortion.
Okay. Or is it you're trying to justify a shooting that's not lawful?
That would be a fabrication
Correct.
for you.
Now, based on just Detective Proctor's statement, you indicated to Detective Proctor that you were hit on the left side of your face, correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, today here in court, you said it was over your left eye, correct?
That's the left side of my face, yes, sir.
Okay, well, wouldn't you agree with me there's a difference between over your left eye and the left side of your face?
I think they're both located in the same place.
Okay, and I really don't mean, I'm truly not being sarcastic, okay? Over your left eye is over your left eye. This is the side of your face. You can't be telling this jury that over your left eye and the left side of your face is the same exact position, are you?
I never thought about a distinction between what you just illustrated. The left side of your face is the left side of your face, or your left eye is the left side of your face. I never differentiated between the two.
So there's no difference between the front of your face and the side of your face to you?
When you illustrate it, they would seem to be. My statement was completely different. I didn't see a difference.
And you're indicating in this statement, and again, we're still just talking about Detective Proctor's statement, that you were hit so hard that you were dazed.
I think dazed, surprised, shocked, all those things would fit that, yes, sir.
Okay, and you yourself said in a tape statement that you bruise easily.
On my arms and my, yes, sir.
Okay, and you heard Jennifer and Matt testify you bruise easily, correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
All right, so here's what you're testifying to. You're testifying that there's I think it came out, a 6'4", Chad Olson, who's full of rage, is virtually on top of you, and he punches you or hits you hard with a cell phone, so much so that you're dazed, yet you easily bruise and there's not a single mark on your face. That's what you want this jury to believe.
Yes, I do.
Not a single swelling, not a single red mark, other than your left eye lid has a little bit of redness on it. That's the extent of the injuries a 6'4" person put on you when they hit you hard enough to daze you, correct?
And knock my glasses off, yes, sir. Or, I'm sorry, askew would be the right word.
And you remember listening to your own witness, Dr. Adams from the medical examiner's office, who talked about all these bony parts and their skin, and the skin's so thin on the side of the face, and you'd expect all these traumas, yet there's not a single mark on you from being punched.
I disagree with the single mark comment.
And everything that we just described isn't even visible on the video, is it?
It was a perception on my part. I was scared. This guy was completely out of control. Didn't seem to be acting rational. I was so scared until I was not sure exactly where he was, but I knew he was attacking me.
Okay. So your perception was an attack that never occurred.
I would that would be a misstatement to say it never occurred.
Okay, well, the video's in evidence. The members of the jury could review the video.
8 years after the event, in February 2022, Reeves was acquitted of second-degree murder and aggravated battery. Curtis then did 2 interviews, one with ABC News and one with Fox News, stating that while he felt sad for Olson's family, he didn't regret the attack and didn't feel like he had instigated it at all. He stated that he had been exonerated by the court system and he was excited to move forward with his life. After the verdict, Nicole Olson stated that she felt that the jury got it wrong. I want everyone to know that even though they tried to make Chad out to be the monster and the aggressor, he was an amazing man, husband, son, father, and friend. She said, "I will not just accept this result lying down. Chad may be gone, but he will never be forgotten, and I will use my voice to try and make sure that no one has to experience what myself and my family has to go through." After the shooting, Nicole created the Olson Family Foundation, which provides financial support to children impacted by gun violence. She has worked since the shooting to take care of her daughter and keep Chad's memory alive. A link will be left in the description if you are interested in donating yourself. I now pass the question off to you. Do you think Curtis was justified in the shooting? Do you feel as if the defense was correct in their assertion that Curtis was too weak to defend himself and Olson took things too far? Or do you feel the opposite? Let me know down in the comments below. As always, if there's a video you would like to see me cover, let me know in the comments down below or by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. I hope you have a great day and remember to stay safe.